I'm Alvina, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom. My family consists of my husband, Morris, our 2 daughters who are in elementary school, and we live with my in-laws on the same property, so we are a household of 6. Before I got married, I worked night shifts, but Morris suggested that I quit my job if it meant we could spend more time together, so I decided to stay at home instead. I spent my time raising our kids, and later worked part-time when things were more manageable. I wasn't sure about living with my in-laws at first. I didn't know them well, and I thought it might be stressful for a daughter-in-law to live with her in-laws. So, I was relieved when Morris promised me before we got married that we wouldn't have to live with his parents. However, after we got married, Morris brought it up again. He said he was worried about his parents and suggested we live on the same property, but not in the same house. I was surprised and protested, but Morris asked, "Do you dislike my parents that much? If our situations were reversed, would you want to live with your parents?" I couldn't argue with that, since my parents were still healthy and living with my brother. Even though I wasn't sure about it, Morris told me that his parents had already started building a house on our property, and we couldn't say no, so we ended up living together. But I made one condition: we wouldn't interfere in each other's lives. This is how our shared living situation began. My in-laws agreed to this, and we lived separate lives. I would join them for meals once or twice a week. The house they built on our property was nice, and I even thought it might be a good thing for us, since we could inherit it one day. However, I made a big mistake in thinking everything would be fine. Over time, my mother-in-law started breaking our agreement. At first, she would visit me once or twice a week for help with small things like carrying something because her back hurt, or preparing dinner because she wasn't feeling well. But soon, she began to expect more. She would ask, "Is breakfast ready?" Or "Why hasn't our part of the house been cleaned?" As if I was responsible for all the housework. Eventually, I ended up cooking all 3 meals and cleaning both houses. Morris didn't say anything about it. Only my father-in-law would apologize sometimes and offer me a snack, saying, "I know it's not much, but please have this." My mother-in-law didn't just interfere with housework. She also started to have strong opinions about how we raised our children. She would say things like, "Your girls should be taking these lessons," or "Why don't your daughters help with housework? What did you have 2 girls for?" Every time she said these things, my father-in-law would defend me, reminding her that we had agreed not to interfere in each other's lives. She would apologize, saying she felt weak and unwell, but after a while, the complaints would start again. When I tried to talk to Morris about it, he would tell me, "We're family. You need to be flexible when things get tough. It's your fault for not handling it better." I felt frustrated every day. Then, one day, my mother-in-law collapsed at home. We called an ambulance, but she passed away suddenly from a seizure. I felt a mix of sadness and relief, as the constant stress from her interference was finally over. Even though she had broken the agreement, my father-in-law had always been kind to me. I tried to take care of him, and he often thanked me, saying he was sorry for not sticking to the agreement and that he couldn't handle housework on his own. My daughters loved their gentle grandfather, and we had some peaceful days together. But a few months later, father-in-law collapsed too. He survived, but became bedridden and needed constant care. When we discussed his care, he said he didn't want to be a burden and mentioned going to a nursing home. But Morris stepped in and said, "Families should care for each other. Nursing homes are for when it's absolutely necessary. Alvina said she's okay with taking care of you." This completely surprised me. I did love my father-in-law and wanted to help him, but caring for him full-time at home was a big challenge. I had young kids to take care of and, clearly, Morris wouldn't help. I didn't want to say I couldn't do it in front of him, so I agreed. Caring for him turned out to be very hard. I had to help him with meals, bathroom visits, and bathing. He was a strong elderly man, and it was awkward sometimes because we were of the opposite sex. Each day, I had to prepare breakfast, help the kids with school, do housework, care for the kids after school, and then prepare dinner, all while caring for father-in-law. Every night, I would feel overwhelmed. Every day, I somehow managed to get through it all, but by the end of the day, I was completely exhausted and would collapse into bed. Morris, instead of helping with his father's care, started spending even less time at home. He claimed he had work, often saying he was working overnight, and would only come home 2 or 3 times a week. Because I never knew when he'd come back, I struggled to prepare dinner on time. When I was too tired to cook anything elaborate, I would make something simple, but Morris would get angry. He'd complain, "I'm working so hard, and this is all I get?" When I asked for help with housework or caring for his father, he would respond, "You're a full-time homemaker. Caring for my father is your job. This went on for 3 years, and it made me feel miserable every day. Over time, my daughters grew older and started helping around the house and with their grandfather. Chantal helped with cooking and cleaning, and Janie would gently wipe her grandfather's back, asking him if it felt good. I was really grateful to have such kind daughters. One day, Morris left his phone at home when he went to work. Despite knowing better, I couldn't resist the temptation to look through it. His password was his birthday, so I could easily unlock it. What I found shocked me. It turned out that Morris had been having an affair since I started taking care of his father, and they even had a child together. The messages on his phone showed that he was financially supporting his mistress, although he had given me money for living expenses, and said he was saving for our children's future. He hadn't saved anything. The messages got worse, with him saying things like, "My kids are old enough now, so they're not cute anymore," and, "Taking care of the old man is a pain, but at least I've got my idle wife to do it." Putting him in a care facility would cost money, but having my wife do it is free. Gotta use free labor, right? I was furious and couldn't stay calm. Normally, I would have kept quiet and waited for more evidence, but I couldn't hold it in. As soon as Morris got out of the bath, I shoved his phone in his face and demanded, "What is this about?" At first, he seemed surprised, but quickly regained his composure. Then he said something that shocked me even more. "You've lost your femininity since we had our kids. You don't wear makeup anymore. Your clothes are all about comfort now, and you fall asleep with your mouth open." Morris's cruel words kept hurting me. He told me, "Ever since you started caring for my father, you've lost even more of your femininity. You're not even a middle-aged woman anymore, you're like a middle-aged man." His words were painful, but he didn't stop there. He went on to say, "My girlfriend always wears makeup and takes care of herself, even after having a child. I don't plan on divorcing you, but my love is for her and our child. Once my father is gone and the kids are adults, I plan to kick you out and live with her." He continued to say things that made me feel worthless. While he showed some concern for the kids, it was clear he didn't care about me at all. I couldn't hold back my tears. I tried to dress up and put on makeup, but it was hard. I was handling childcare and housework all on my own, and I had to do everything quickly, even if it meant my hair was messy. I asked him, "If you wanted me to look beautiful, why didn't you help with the housework or caring for the kids and your father?" But Morris was unkind in his reply. "Look at other women. They stay beautiful while raising their kids. You're just not efficient. As a stay-at-home mom, you have no right to argue with me. I'm the one putting food on the table. If you have a complaint, you can divorce me." He added coldly, "For a woman your age, job opportunities are limited. Do you really think you can raise our 2 kids on alimony and compensation from me?" I felt crushed and couldn't respond. I wanted to think about the children, and I couldn't bring myself to divorce him. But Morris said, "You can't, can you? If you care about the kids, you'll take care of my father until the end. After that, you'll work as my housekeeper. Don't worry, when the kids grow up, they'll help you, so you'd better treat them well." Then, he went to his room with a satisfied smirk on his face. I was stunned and didn't know what to do. Eventually, I regained my composure and went to take care of my father-in-law. I tried to act like everything was fine, but it must have been clear something was wrong. He asked me, "Is something wrong?" I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't hold back my tears and ended up telling him everything. After listening to me, father-in-law said, "Alvina, I have something for you. Can you come back in a few hours?" I did as he asked, and when I returned, he gave me a piece of paper with someone's contact information on it. He said, "Contact this person. They know everything. I should be the one to act, but with my condition." And he smiled. A few days later, Morris told me, "I'll be on a business trip for a week. I guess it's better for you too if we call it a business trip, right? I'll enjoy the sightseeing." I decided to take action while Morris was away on his week-long business trip. A week later, when he came home, he was furious and panicked. Everything was gone. I calmly asked him, "How was your week-long affair trip? Did you enjoy it?" Morris shouted, demanding to know what was going on. I explained to him that the contact my father-in-law had given me was for a man named Mr. Corey, an old friend of his who was a large landowner. Mr. Corey had always wanted the land where my in-laws' house stood and had been trying to buy it for a long time. My father-in-law had always refused, saying he planned to leave it to his son, Morris, but after seeing how Morris was acting, my father-in-law decided it was best to sell. Before Morris left, I had already spoken to Mr. Corey and we arranged to sell the house and land for a price much higher than the market rate. My father-in-law even asked Mr. Corey to demolish the house during the week Morris was gone. When Morris returned, all he found was an empty lot. We planned to build a new house using the money from the land sale. When Morris heard this, he tried to convince me to rely on him, saying, "You're jobless, right? Even if your father builds a house, you can't expect to live comfortably without my income." But I told him, "Don't worry about me. I got a job offer from a company run by an acquaintance." Then I turned the tables and asked, "Morris, shouldn't you be worrying about yourself instead?" When he asked what I meant, I explained that his job was only secure because his father was friends with the company president. But now that my father-in-law had cut ties with him, I told him, "The president said you could be fired because of your poor work and your affair." Morris tried to excuse himself, saying, "I didn't mean it. I was just angry. I wasn't really going to leave you. We're family. Let's work things out." But I firmly told him, "My family now is my daughters and my father-in-law. Goodbye." Then I hung up on him. Morris called several times after that, but I ignored him. Later, my divorce from Morris was finalized. I claimed compensation from both Morris and his mistress, as I had plenty of evidence of his affair. Through various sources, including the president of his company, I found out that Morris had been embezzling company funds to support his double life. Morris not only lost his job but was also being sued for damages. He tried to move in with his mistress, but she dumped him when she realized he had no money left. Now, Morris is struggling to find a new job while working multiple part-time jobs to pay off his debts and child support. As for me, I plan to live with my daughters and my father-in-law in a rented house until we can move into the new house my father-in-law is building for us. When my father-in-law offered to build the house, he said he wanted to move into a care facility, and that he wanted us to live happily there. I told him, "What are you talking about, Dad? We're family. It would make the girls sad. Let's live together." My daughters also took his hand and said, "We want to live with Grandpa." My father-in-law, with tears in his eyes, thanked us. Although it's tough to work and take care of him, my daughters help out. So, we are now living together as a family of 4 with the help of home assistants and day services. We're looking forward to moving into our new home as a family.
The shrill ring of my phone pierced through the chaos of the wedding reception I was overseeing. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my stomach drop. Nathan. My husband's timing couldn't have been worse. "Marissa, where the hell are you?" Nathan's voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with venom. I stepped away from the bustling dance floor, my heels clicking against the polished marble. "Nathan, I'm at work. You know I have the Peterson wedding tonight." "Work? Always work with you, isn't it?" he spat. "Did you forget about Lily's rehearsal dinner? Your own sister-in-law?" My heart sank. Lily's rehearsal dinner. How could I have forgotten? I glanced at my watch, realizing with horror that it had started over an hour ago. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I completely lost track of time. I'll be there as soon as I can." "Don't bother," he cut me off. "It's almost over. You've embarrassed me enough for one night. Please, let me explain to Lily." "Oh, I'm sure she'll understand," Nathan's voice dripped with sarcasm. "After all, it's only the most important day of her life. But hey, at least you didn't miss planning some stranger's wedding, right?" I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. "That's not fair, Nathan. This is my job. I can't just—" "Your job?" He laughed bitterly. "Your precious job is more important than family? Than me?" Before I could respond, a commotion near the cake table caught my attention. The bride was gesturing wildly, her face flushed with anger. "Nathan, I have to go. There's an emergency with the bride. We'll talk about this when I get home, okay?" "Don't bother coming home tonight," he snarled. "I'm sure you can find a nice, cozy office to sleep in." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. How had my life come to this? "Marissa!" "Janice," my boss called out. "We need you over here, stat." I took a deep breath, plastered on my professional smile, and hurried over to defuse the situation with the bride. As I smoothed things over and got the reception back on track, Nathan's words echoed in my head. Hours later, as I locked up the venue, exhaustion settled into my bones. The thought of going home to face Nathan's wrath made my stomach churn. I pulled out my phone, hesitating before dialing Lily's number. "Hello?" Her voice was soft, tinged with disappointment. "Lily, I'm so sorry about missing the rehearsal dinner," I began, my voice cracking. "I got caught up at work and—" "It's okay, Marissa," she interrupted gently. "I understand. Nathan told us you had an emergency with a client." I blinked, surprised. He did? Yeah, he seemed pretty upset though. Is everything all right between you two? I swallowed hard. We're fine. Just a little stressed with work and the wedding planning. Well, don't work too hard, Lily said. We need our star wedding planner in top form for the big day. As I hung up, a mix of emotions swirled inside me. Relief that Lily wasn't angry, confusion over Nathan's unexpected cover story, and a gnawing dread about what awaited me at home. I climbed into my car, my hand hovering over the ignition. Go home and face Nathan's fury, or take him up on his suggestion to find somewhere else to sleep tonight? The choice I made in that moment would set in motion a chain of events that would change my life forever. Little did I know, the real storm was just beginning. I sat in my car, parked outside our house, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The porch light was on, casting an eerie glow across the manicured lawn. Nathan was waiting for me. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back of how we got here. It all started in high school. Nathan was the charming quarterback, and I was the quiet girl with big dreams of planning lavish events. He swept me off my feet with grand gestures and promises of a perfect life together. You're going to be the best event planner in the state, he'd say, his arm draped around my shoulders. And I'll be right there, supporting you every step of the way. Those words echoed in my mind as I finally mustered the courage to enter our house. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick with tension, and Nathan's silence was deafening. Nathan, I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. He appeared from the shadows of our living room, his face a mask of controlled anger. Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. I'm sorry about missing Lily's dinner. I lost track of time at work and... Work. He spat the word like a curse. Always work. Tell me, Marissa, when did your job become more important than your family? Than me? I flinched at his tone. That's not fair, Nathan. You know how hard I've worked to get where I am. This was my dream. Your dream? He laughed bitterly. And what about our dreams, the family we talked about, the life we planned together? Guilt washed over me. We had talked about starting a family, but I'd always found reasons to put it off. My career was just taking off, and I wasn't ready to give that up. I thought you supported my career, I said, my voice small. Nathan's eyes flashed dangerously. I supported you, Marissa. I've always supported you, but at what cost? You're never home. You missed Christmas with my family last year because of a client's New Year's Eve party. And now Lily's rehearsal dinner? I opened my mouth to defend myself, but he cut me off. Do you know how embarrassing it was to explain your absence? To watch my mother's disappointment? To see the pity in everyone's eyes? Tears stung my eyes. I'll make it up to Lily. I'll plan her the most beautiful wedding she could ever imagine. Nathan's laugh was cold and humorless. Of course you will, because that's what you do best, isn't it? Plan perfect days for strangers while neglecting your own family. His words cut deep, each one a dagger to my heart. I wanted to argue to defend myself, but a part of me wondered if he was right. Had I really lost sight of what was truly important? I'm sorry, I whispered, the fight draining out of me. Nathan's expression softened slightly, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the boy I fell in love with all those years ago. He stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. I love you, Marissa, he said softly. But something has to change. We can't go on like this. I nodded, relief washing over me. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe it wasn't too late. But then his grip on my face tightened, his fingers digging into my skin. From now on, you're going to start putting this family first. No more late nights at the office. No more missed dinners, and you're going to give Lily the wedding of her dreams, even if it kills you. Understood? I swallowed hard, a chill running down my spine. This wasn't the Nathan I knew. This wasn't the man I married. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized with a sinking heart that maybe it was. Maybe this was who he'd been all along, and I'd been too blind to see it. Understood, I whispered, sealing my fate with a single word. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., jolting me awake. I reached out to silence it, careful not to disturb Nathan. As I slipped out of bed, his words from last night echoed in my mind. No more late nights at the office. I tiptoed to the kitchen, my heart racing as I brewed coffee and scrolled through my overflowing inbox. 63 new emails. I'd have to tackle them before heading to the office. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Nathan stumbled into the kitchen, his eyes narrowing at the sight of me hunched over my laptop. "Working already?" he growled. I quickly closed the screen. "Just checking the weather." He grunted, unconvinced, and poured himself coffee. The silence between us was suffocating. "I was thinking," I ventured, "maybe we could have dinner with your mom and Lily tonight, to make up for missing the rehearsal dinner?" Nathan's face softened slightly. "That's actually a good idea. I'll call them." As he left the room, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Small victories. At the office, Janice cornered me the moment I walked in. "Marissa, where are we with the Goldstein wedding? They've been calling non-stop." I felt a pang of guilt. The Goldstein wedding was next week, and I was nowhere near ready. "I'm on it, Janice. I'll have everything finalized by tomorrow." She raised an eyebrow. "Tomorrow? Cutting it a bit close, aren't we?" I nodded, ashamed. This wasn't like me. I was always ahead of schedule, always prepared. But lately, with Nathan's increasing demands and my attempts to balance work and family, I was dropping balls left and right. The day flew by in a blur of phone calls, vendor negotiations, and last-minute crisis management. Before I knew it, it was 6:30 p.m. Panic set in as I realized I was late for dinner with Nathan's family. I rushed into the restaurant at 7:15, out of breath and disheveled. Nathan's eyes flashed with anger as I approached the table. "I'm so sorry," I gasped. "There was an emergency with—" "Save it." Nathan cut me off, his voice low and dangerous. "We've heard it all before." Lily jumped up to hug me, her smile warm and genuine. "It's okay, Marissa. We're just glad you're here now." Grace, Nathan's mother, nodded in agreement, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. It cut deeper than Nathan's anger. As we ate, I tried to steer the conversation towards Lily's wedding plans, hoping to smooth things over. "So, have you decided on a color scheme yet?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about that. I know you're busy, but I was wondering if maybe you could help plan the wedding. It would mean so much to me." I felt Nathan stiffen beside me. We locked eyes, and I saw the warning there. "Don't you dare say no." "Of course," I heard myself say. "I'd be honored." The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. As we said our goodbyes, Grace pulled me aside. "Marissa, dear, is everything all right? You seem stressed." For a moment I considered telling her everything, about Nathan's controlling behavior, about the impossible balancing act I was trying to maintain. But then I saw Nathan watching us, his jaw clenched, and the words died in my throat. "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just busy with work." The drive home was silent. As soon as we walked through the door, Nathan exploded. "What the hell was that?" he shouted. "You embarrass me in front of my family, and then you agree to plan Lily's wedding? Are you trying to make me look bad?" "Nathan, please," I pleaded. "I'm trying my best. I thought you'd be happy I agreed to help Lily." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "Your best isn't good enough. You need to do better, for this family, for me." As I looked into his eyes, cold and unforgiving, I realized with startling clarity that I didn't recognize the man in front of me anymore. And worse, I didn't recognize myself. Something had to change. But as Nathan's grip tightened, I wondered if it was already too late. The morning after our disastrous family dinner, I woke to the insistent buzz of my phone. Lily's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice still thick with sleep. "Marissa, I hope I didn't wake you," Lily chirped, her excitement palpable even through the phone. "I just couldn't wait to start planning. Are you free for lunch today?" I glanced at the clock, 7:30 a.m. Nathan had already left for work, leaving behind a terse note reminding me to be home for dinner. "Sure, Lily. How about noon at Cafe Rosemary?" As I hung up, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Excitement at the prospect of planning Lily's wedding warred with anxiety over Nathan's potential reaction. But I pushed those thoughts aside. This was for Lily, and I was determined to make it perfect. At the cafe, Lily's enthusiasm was infectious. She pulled out a binder bursting with magazine clippings and Pinterest printouts. "I was thinking a spring garden theme," she gushed. "Lots of pastels, wildflowers, maybe even butterflies." I found myself caught up in her joy, my professional instincts kicking in. We spent hours poring over color swatches and venue options, the time flying by. It wasn't until my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan that reality came crashing back. "Where are you? Dinner's in an hour." I looked at my watch in horror. It was already 5 p.m. Lily, I'm so sorry, but I have to go. Nathan's expecting me home. Lily's face fell. Oh, of course. I didn't realize how late it was. We got so caught up. She hesitated, then added softly, Marissa, is everything okay with you and Nathan? You seem on edge lately. For a moment, I considered confiding in her, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I tarnish her image of her brother? Everything's fine, I lied. Just busy with work, you know. I rushed home, my mind racing. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Nathan's car already there. My heart sank. The moment I stepped inside, Nathan was on me. Where the hell have you been? He demanded, his face twisted with anger. I was with Lily, I explained quickly. We were discussing wedding plans. I lost track of time. Lost track of time? He sneered. Seems to be a habit with you lately. What about your actual job? Or have you forgotten about that too? As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Janice. I answered, my voice shaking. Janice, Marissa, where are the finalized details for the Goldstein wedding? Janice's voice was sharp with frustration. The ceremony is in 3 days, and the client is threatening to pull out if we don't have everything sorted by tomorrow morning. I felt the blood drain from my face. In the whirlwind of Lily's planning, I'd completely forgotten about the Goldstein wedding. I'll have everything to you first thing tomorrow, I promise, I said, my mind already racing through what needed to be done. As I hung up, Nathan's cold laughter filled the room. Looks like someone's in trouble at work. Maybe if you focused more on your job instead of playing fairy godmother to my sister, you wouldn't be in this mess. His words stung, but a part of me knew he was right. I was dropping balls left and right, failing at work and at home. Something had to give. I'll fix this, I said, more to myself than to Nathan. I'll make it right. Nathan's eyes narrowed. You better, and while you're at it, you might want to think long and hard about your priorities, because from where I'm standing, you're failing at everything. As he stormed out of the room, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed. I had a crucial decision to make. My career, my marriage, my relationship with Lily. Everything was hanging by a thread, and I knew that whatever I chose, something would have to be sacrificed. With shaking hands, I reached for my laptop. I had a long night ahead of me, and the choices I made in the coming hours would shape the rest of my life. The question was, what was I willing to lose? The weeks following my late-night scramble to save the Goldstein wedding were a blur of endless to-do lists and sleepless nights. I was determined to prove to everyone, Nathan, Janice, and myself, that I could handle it all. Lily's wedding plans were coming together beautifully, and I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make this work. That hope shattered on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was on my way to meet with Lily's florist when my phone rang. It was Grace, Nathan's mother. Marissa, dear, her voice trembled. There's been an accident. Nathan's in the hospital. The world tilted on its axis. What happened? Is he okay? Car accident. They say he'll be fine, but he's asking for you. I made a sharp U-turn, my heart pounding. As I sped towards the hospital, my phone buzzed incessantly. Lily, Janice, the florist. I ignored them all. At the hospital, I found Grace in the waiting room, her face pale with worry. He's in there. She pointed to a room down the hall. Go on, I'll wait here. I hesitated, then stepped into Nathan's room. He lay there, bruised and bandaged, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. For a moment, I saw the boy I fell in love with all those years ago. Marissa, he croaked, reaching for my hand. You came. Of course I came, I said, squeezing his hand. I was so worried. His grip tightened. I thought I might never see you again, and all I could think was how much I regretted our fight. Tears welled in my eyes. Nathan, no, let me finish, he interrupted. I've been horrible to you. I see that now. I want to change, to be better, for you, for us. I felt a weight lift from my chest. This was what I'd been waiting for, wasn't it? A chance to start over, to rebuild our marriage. But then my phone buzzed again. Lily's name flashed on the screen and reality came crashing back. I had responsibilities, commitments, people counting on me. I have to take this, I said, stepping out of the room. Marissa, where are you? Lily's voice was frantic. The florist is threatening to cancel if we don't finalize the order today. I glanced back at Nathan's room, torn. Lily, I'm so sorry. There's been an accident. Nathan's in the hospital. Oh my God, is he okay? Should I come? No, he's fine. Just some bruises. Look, can you handle the florist? I'll make it up to you, I promise. There was a pause. Of course, don't worry about it. Take care of Nathan. As I hung up, I saw Grace watching me, her expression unreadable. Everything okay? She asked. Yes, just work stuff, I mumbled. She nodded slowly. Marissa, I know it's not my place, but are you happy? Truly happy? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I thought of Nathan's promise to change, of Lily's excitement for her wedding, of the career I'd worked so hard to build. How could I possibly choose? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted down the hall. Nurses rushed past us towards Nathan's room. My blood ran cold. Code blue in room 305, someone shouted. I stood frozen as chaos unfolded around me. Grace's grip on my arm was painfully tight. In that moment, watching the medical team fight to save Nathan's life, I realized the true weight of my choices. If Nathan survived, could I really trust his promise to change? If I stayed, what would I be sacrificing? My career? My self-respect? But if I left, could I live with the guilt? As the alarms blared and doctors shouted orders, I knew I was standing at a crossroads. Whatever decision I made in the next few moments would irrevocably change the course of my life. The question was I brave enough to make it? The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in Nathan's hospital room. He'd survived the code blue, but barely. The doctors called it a miracle. I called it a complication. You have to be at Lily's wedding, Nathan rasped, his eyes boring into mine. She needs you there? I shook my head, gesturing to his frail form. Nathan, you just had a near-death experience. Lily will understand if I... No. He cut me off, his voice surprisingly strong. You made a commitment, Todd. You're going. A chill ran down my spine. Even from a hospital bed, Nathan was trying to control me. I opened my mouth to argue, but Grace appeared in the doorway. Marissa, dear, she said softly, can I speak with you outside? In the hallway, Grace's facade crumbled. Lily just called. She's frantic. With Nathan in the hospital and you here, she's worried the wedding will fall apart. My heart sank. I can't leave Nathan, Grace. He nearly died. Grace's eyes hardened. Nathan will be fine. He has the best doctors. But Lily, this is her big day. You promised her. The weight of expectation pressed down on me. I felt like I was suffocating. I'll go, I heard myself say. Just let me say goodbye to Nathan. Back in the room, Nathan's lips curled into a triumphant smile. I knew you'd make the right choice, he said. Don't let me down. The drive to the wedding venue was a blur. My ribs ached from the accident, a constant reminder of the chaos my life had become. As I pulled up to the picturesque garden, I saw Lily pacing anxiously. Marissa, she cried, rushing towards me. Thank God you're here. Everything's falling apart. The caterer's late, the flowers are wrong, and... She stopped short, taking in my appearance. Are you okay? You look awful. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just a little banged up from the accident. Don't worry, I'll fix everything. The next few hours were a whirlwind of crisis management. I juggled vendors, rearranged seating charts, and soothed Lily's frayed nerves, all while ignoring the stabbing pain in my side and the constant buzz of my phone with updates from the hospital. As guests began to arrive, I ducked into a bathroom to catch my breath. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, pale, with dark circles under her eyes and a hospital gown peeking out from under her hastily thrown-on blazer. My phone buzzed again. Nathan. Where are you? His text read. The doctor wants to discuss my treatment plan. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. How had I let things get this far? A knock at the door startled me. Marissa? It was Janice. Are you in there? We have a situation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Janice's eyes widened at my appearance, but she pressed on. The groom's family is threatening to leave. Something about the seating arrangement? I'll handle it, I said automatically, my body moving on autopilot. As I navigated the brewing family drama, my vision began to blur. The pain in my side intensified, and I stumbled, catching myself on a nearby chair. Marissa? Lily's voice sounded far away. Are you okay? I tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The room spun, faces blurring together. I felt myself falling, powerless to stop it. As darkness closed in, I had a moment of startling clarity. I couldn't keep living like this, torn between everyone's expectations. Something had to give. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was Lily's panicked voice calling my name. As I slipped into the void, I realized that this moment, this very public, very messy breakdown, might be the thing that finally set me free. But at what cost? I awoke to the harsh glare of fluorescent lights and the steady beep of a heart monitor. For a moment I thought I was back in Nathan's hospital room, but as my vision cleared I realized I was the patient this time. Lily's tear-stained face came into focus. "Marissa, thank God you're awake. We were so worried." "The wedding," I croaked, trying to sit up. "What happened?" Lily gently pushed me back down. "Don't worry about that now. The doctor said you collapsed from exhaustion and stress. Your ribs were also more damaged than you let on." Shame washed over me. I'd ruined Lily's big day. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I never meant to." "Stop," she interrupted, her voice firm. "This isn't your fault. It's Nathan's." I blinked, surprised by the venom in her tone. "What do you mean?" Lily's eyes flashed with anger. "We know everything, Marissa, about how he's been treating you, the emotional abuse, the control. When you collapsed, your phone kept ringing. I answered it and, well, let's just say Nathan showed his true colors." My heart raced. "Lily, The door burst open and Nathan stormed in, followed closely by Grace. "There you are," he snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've embarrassed this entire family." "Nathan," Grace gasped. "That's enough." But Nathan was beyond reason. He loomed over my bed, his face contorted with rage. "I knew you couldn't handle it. You're weak, pathetic. I should have never married you." Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and fear bubbled to the surface. "You're right, Nathan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You shouldn't have married me, because I deserve better than you." The room fell silent. Nathan's face paled, then flushed with anger. "What did you say to me?" I sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in my side. "I said I deserve better. I'm done, Nathan. I want a divorce." "You ungrateful bitch," he hissed, reaching for me. But before he could touch me, Lily stepped between us. "Don't you dare," she warned. "Touch her, and I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." Nathan stumbled back, shock written across his face. "Lily, you're taking her side?" "There are no sides, Nathan," Grace said, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Only right and wrong, and what you've done to Marissa is wrong." I watched in amazement as my in-laws, the family I'd tried so hard to please, rallied around me. Tears streamed down my face, but for the first time in years, they were tears of relief. Nathan's gaze darted between us, realization dawning that he'd lost control. With a final venomous glare at me, he stormed out of the room. In the silence that followed, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. But as the adrenaline faded, fear crept in. What had I done? Where would I go? How would I start over? As if reading my mind, Janice appeared in the doorway. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "Marissa, I owe you an apology. I should have seen what was happening, but I want you to know your job is safe. In fact, I think it's time we discussed making you a partner in the business." I stared at her, overwhelmed. In the span of a few hours, my entire world had turned upside down. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. "What do I do now?" I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Lily squeezed my hand. "You heal, you rebuild, and we'll be here every step of the way." As I looked around at the faces of those who truly cared for me, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my freedom. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to face it. Because finally, gloriously, I was free. 6 months after that fateful day in the hospital, I stood outside the courthouse, my hands trembling as I clutched a thick manila envelope. Inside were the final divorce papers, along with copies of the journal entries that had become my salvation. "Are you ready?" Lily asked, squeezing my arm gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. "As I'll ever be." We walked into the courtroom, my heart pounding. Nathan was already there, his face a mask of cold indifference. But I saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes when he noticed Lily by my side. As the proceedings began, I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was it. The end of one chapter, the beginning of another. "Your Honor," my lawyer began, "I'd like to submit these journal entries as evidence of the emotional abuse my client endured throughout her marriage." Nathan's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him. As excerpts from my journal were read aloud, I watched Nathan's facade crumble. The charming mask he wore for the world slipped away, revealing the monster beneath. Grace, sitting in the back of the courtroom, let out a choked sob. I caught her eye, seeing the pain and regret there. She mouthed a silent "I'm sorry," and I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, my voice steady. "Your Honor, for years I lived in fear. I sacrificed my dreams, my self-worth, everything that made me who I am, to please a man who was never satisfied. Today I'm reclaiming my life." I turned to Nathan, meeting his gaze head-on. "I forgive you, Nathan. Not for your sake, but for mine. I'm letting go of the pain, the anger, the shame. From this day forward, I choose me." The judge's gavel came down, granting the divorce and a restraining order against Nathan. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Janice was waiting with a bouquet of flowers. "Congratulations, partner," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Ready to plan your freedom party?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You bet, but first, I have one last thing to do." I walked over to Grace, who stood alone, looking lost. "Grace," I said softly. She turned, tears in her eyes. "Marissa, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you." I took her hands in mine. "You're here now. That's what matters." "But I've lost everything," she whispered. "My son, my family." I shook my head. "No, you haven't. Lily and I, we're still your family, if you want us to be." Grace broke down, pulling me into a fierce hug. Over her shoulder, I saw Nathan watching us, his face twisted with anger and defeat. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a final surge of pity for the man I once loved. Then I turned away, leaving him and the past behind. That evening, surrounded by friends and family, my chosen family, I raised a glass. "To new beginnings," I toasted. As laughter and love filled the room, I caught my reflection in a mirror. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. I smiled, realizing that the greatest revenge wasn't in destroying Nathan, but in rebuilding myself. My phone buzzed with a text from a new client, eager to plan her vow renewal. I grinned, excited for the future and all its possibilities. Because now, at last, I was writing my own happily ever after. The sound of shattering glass jolted me awake. I bolted upright, my heart pounding. Hank stirred beside me, his eyes fluttering open. "Amy, what's wrong?" he mumbled, still half asleep. "I heard something break downstairs," I whispered, already swinging my legs over the side of the bed. "I'm going to check it out." Hank sat up, suddenly alert. "Wait, I'll come with you." We crept down the stairs, the old wood creaking beneath our feet. As we rounded the corner into the living room, I gasped. Hank's father, George, was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by shards of glass from a broken vase. "Dad!" Hank rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. "Dad, can you hear me?" I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "Yes, we need an ambulance," I said, my voice trembling. "My father-in-law? He's collapsed." The next few hours passed in a blur of sirens, paramedics, and the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room. Hank paced back and forth, his face etched with worry. I sat with my hands clasped tightly in my lap, watching the second hand of the clock tick by agonizingly slowly. Finally, a doctor emerged, his expression grave. "Mr. Thompson?" he asked, looking at Hank. Hank nodded, his face pale. "How's my father?" The doctor's words hit us like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, but your father didn't make it. He suffered a massive heart attack. We did everything we could, but—" I stood up, wrapping my arms around Hank as he swayed on his feet. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be happening." The drive home was silent, the weight of our loss hanging heavy in the air. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw two figures silhouetted in the doorway, Edna, Hank's mother, and Lila, his younger sister. Edna rushed towards us as we got out of the car, her face streaked with tears. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Is George really—" Hank nodded, unable to speak. Edna let out a wail of anguish, collapsing against him. Lila stood frozen on the porch, her eyes wide with shock. As we made our way inside, I couldn't help but notice the state of the house. Dishes were piled high in the sink, clothes strewn across the living room. It was clear that Edna had been struggling to keep up with things, even before this tragedy struck. "What are we going to do?" Lila asked, her voice small and frightened. "Dad handled all the finances. We don't even know where to start." I exchanged a glance with Hank, seeing the same realization dawn in his eyes. His family needed help, and we were the only ones who could provide it. "We'll figure it out," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Maybe we should think about moving in for a while, just until things settle down." Hank squeezed my hand gratefully. "Are you sure, Amy?" That's a big ask. I nodded, pushing down the flicker of unease in my stomach. Of course. We're family. We'll get through this together. Edna looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but calculating. Yes, she said slowly. Yes, that would be for the best. You two can take the guest room upstairs. As we climbed the stairs to start packing some of our things, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped onto a path I couldn't easily leave. But looking at Hank's grief-stricken face, I knew I'd made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them as a team. Little did I know, as I folded our clothes into suitcases, that this decision would test the very foundations of our marriage and change our lives forever. The first rays of sunlight crept through the dusty curtains, rousing me from a fitful sleep. I stretched, my back aching from the unfamiliar mattress. 2 weeks had passed since we'd moved in with Hank's family, and I still felt like a stranger in this house. I padded downstairs, hoping to grab a quick cup of coffee before everyone else woke up. To my surprise, Edna was already in the kitchen, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "Good morning, Amy," she said, her tone clipped. "I'm glad you're up. There's a list of chores on the fridge that need doing today." I blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, sure, I can help out, but I was planning to start looking for a job today. We can't rely on our savings forever." Edna's eyes narrowed. "A job? Don't be ridiculous. There's more than enough work to be done here. Lila and I can't manage everything on our own." Before I could respond, Hank stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and yawning. "Morning, ladies," he mumbled, kissing my cheek. Edna's demeanor instantly changed. "Oh, Hank, darling, did you sleep well? Sit down. I'll make you some breakfast." I watched, dumbfounded, as she bustled around the kitchen, fawning over her son. The list of chores was forgotten as she piled Hank's plate high with pancakes and bacon. "Mom, you don't have to do all this," Hank protested weakly. "Nonsense," Edna cooed. "You're working so hard to sort out your father's affairs. It's the least I can do." I cleared my throat. "I can make breakfast tomorrow, Edna. Give you a break." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I'm sure you have your hands full with other things, dear. Now why don't you get started on that list?" Swallowing my frustration, I grabbed the list from the fridge. It was long, impossibly long for one person to complete in a day. I glanced at Hank, hoping he'd say something, but he was engrossed in his breakfast, oblivious to the tension in the room. As I started on the first task, scrubbing the bathroom tiles, Lila sauntered in, still in her pajamas. "Oh, good, you're cleaning," she said, perching on the edge of the bathtub. "Make sure you get behind the toilet. It's been ages since anyone did a proper job in here." I gritted my teeth. "Lila, why don't you help? It would go faster with 2 of us." She laughed as if I'd told a particularly funny joke. "Oh, Amy, I have to get ready for my job interview, remember? Not all of us can afford to be homemakers." The words stung more than I cared to admit. I watched her flounce out of the bathroom, my hands clenched around the scrub brush. The day dragged on, a blur of cleaning, cooking, and biting my tongue. By the time evening rolled around, I was exhausted and on edge. Hank found me in the laundry room, folding what felt like the 100th load of the day. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. Concern etched on his face. "You've been quiet all day." I forced a smile. "Just tired. It's been a long day." He wrapped his arms around me, and for a moment, I let myself relax into his embrace. "I know this isn't easy," he murmured, "but it's temporary, I promise. Once we get Dad's estate sorted out, things will get better." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. How could I tell him that his mother and sister were treating me like a servant? That I felt trapped and suffocated in this house? Just then, Edna's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Amy, where are you? Dinner won't make itself, you know." Hank chuckled. "You'd better go. You know how Mom gets when she's hungry." As I watched him walk away, whistling cheerfully, a realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't temporary. This was my new reality. And if I didn't find a way to stand up for myself soon, I'd disappear completely under the weight of Edna and Lila's demands. With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and headed to the kitchen. Something had to change, and soon. I just hoped I had the strength to make it happen. The acrid smell of burnt toast jolted me awake. I rushed downstairs, my heart pounding, only to find Edna standing in the smoke-filled kitchen, a scowl etched on her face. "Amy," she snapped. "Where have you been? Look at this mess." I bit back a retort. It was barely 7 a.m. and I'd been up until midnight doing laundry. "I'm sorry, Edna. I'll clean it up right away." As I scraped the charred remains into the trash, Edna hovered behind me. "You know, when Hank was growing up, I always had a hot breakfast ready for him, every single morning." The implication was clear. I wasn't measuring up to her standards. "I'll do better tomorrow," I promised, though the words tasted bitter on my tongue. Just then, Hank stumbled into the kitchen, yawning. "Morning, everyone. What's for breakfast?" Edna's demeanor changed instantly. "Oh, darling, Amy burnt the toast. Why don't I whip you up some eggs?" I watched, seething silently, as Edna fussed over Hank. He seemed oblivious to the tension, chatting about his plans for the day. As Hank left for work, Edna turned to me, her eyes cold. "The gutters need cleaning. Lila's too busy with her job search, so you'll have to do it." I stared at her in disbelief. "Edna, I've never cleaned gutters before. It could be dangerous." She waved dismissively. "Nonsense. There's a ladder in the garage. Just be careful not to scratch the siding." Hours later, I found myself perched precariously on the ladder, scooping out handfuls of soggy leaves. My arms ached, and my back screamed in protest. "Amy!" Lila's voice startled me. I nearly lost my balance. "When you're done up there, can you iron my blouse? I have another interview tomorrow." Before I could respond, she disappeared back into the house. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. That evening, as Hank and I got ready for bed, I decided to broach the subject. "Honey, don't you think your mom and Lila are being a bit demanding?" Hank looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "They're just trying to keep the house running smoothly." I took a deep breath. "It feels like I'm doing everything, Hank. Your mom criticizes me constantly, and Lila treats me like her personal maid." He frowned. "Come on, Amy. They're grieving. We need to cut them some slack." "But what about me?" I protested. "I'm trying my best, but nothing I do is ever good enough." Hank sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I know it's not easy, but they're my family. Can't you just try to get along? For me?" His words hit me like a slap. I turned away, blinking back tears. "Sure, Hank. Whatever you say." The next morning, I found a note from Edna on the kitchen counter. "Amy, we're hosting a memorial luncheon for George this Saturday. I need you to clean the house top to bottom and prepare food for 30 people. Here's the menu." I stared at the extensive list, my heart sinking. How was I supposed to do all this in just 3 days? As I started gathering cleaning supplies, Lila breezed in. "Oh good, you saw Mom's note. Don't forget to pick up my dry cleaning while you're out shopping for ingredients." Something inside me snapped. "Lila, I can't do everything. Why don't you help with the preparations?" She looked at me as if I'd grown a second head. "Me? But I'm still in mourning, Amy. How could you be so insensitive?" I watched her flounce out of the room, my hands shaking with suppressed rage. This was getting out of control. That night, I lay awake long after Hank had fallen asleep. I knew I should tell him how bad things had gotten, but the thought of forcing him to choose between me and his family was unbearable. As I stared at the ceiling, a chilling realization washed over me. If I didn't find a way to stand up for myself soon, I might lose myself completely in this house of emotional manipulation and endless demands. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a job. It was time to reclaim some semblance of independence before it was too late. The aroma of freshly baked bread enveloped me as I stepped into Sweet Delight's bakery. It was my first day back at work, and the familiar scent brought a smile to my face for the first time in weeks. "Amy, welcome back." Marge, the owner, greeted me warmly. "We've missed you around here." I tied on my apron, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced since moving in with Hank's family. "Thanks, Marge, it's good to be back." As I kneaded dough and decorated cakes, the tension that had become a constant companion slowly melted away. Here, I wasn't just Hank's wife or Edna's daughter-in-law. I was Amy, the talented baker who could make buttercream roses bloom with a flick of her wrist. When I returned home that evening, the house was eerily quiet. I found Edna in the living room, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "The laundry's piled up, and we had to order takeout for dinner." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I went back to work at the bakery, Edna. I told you I was planning to look for a job." Her eyes narrowed. "A job? But who's going to take care of the house? Lila and I can't do everything ourselves." "I'm still happy to help out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. but we need the extra income, and honestly, I need something for myself. Edna's face darkened. I see. So you're putting your selfish desires above the needs of this family. I'm sure Hank will be thrilled to hear that. Before I could respond, Hank walked in. Hear what? He asked, looking between us. Edna's demeanor changed instantly. Oh, Hank, darling, Amy's decided to abandon us and go back to work. Can you believe it? Hank's brow furrowed. Is that true, Amy? I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe now he'd see how unreasonable his mother was being. Yes, I started back at the bakery today. I thought it would be good for us financially. To my dismay, Hank's frown deepened. But who's going to take care of things here? Mom and Lila need help, Amy. You know that. My heart sank. I can still help out, Hank. It's just part-time for now. He shook his head. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the right time. We should be focused on family right now. I watched in disbelief as he walked away, effectively ending the conversation. Edna shot me a triumphant look before following him. The next few weeks were a blur of early mornings at the bakery and late nights catching up on housework. Edna and Lila's demands seemed to multiply, and Hank remained oblivious to my growing exhaustion. One evening, as I scrubbed the kitchen floor, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I don't know why Hank married her. Edna's voice drifted from the living room. She's so selfish, putting her silly job before family. I know, Mom, Lila agreed. And did you see how she botched the laundry yesterday? My favorite blouse is ruined. We need to do something, Edna said, her voice low and determined. For Hank's sake, he deserves better than this. I sat back on my heels, my heart pounding. They were actively plotting against me. And Hank, would he believe them over me? Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marge. Amy, I need you to open the bakery tomorrow. Early delivery coming in. Can you be here by 4 a.m.? I stared at the message, torn. If I went in early, I'd miss making Hank's breakfast. Edna would surely use that against me. But if I didn't go, I'd be letting Marge down and potentially jeopardizing my job. As I stood there, mop in hand, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could either continue trying to please everyone and slowly lose myself in the process, or I could take a stand and fight for my own happiness. With shaking hands, I typed out a response to Marge, I'll be there. Then, taking a deep breath, I walked into the living room to face Edna and Lila. It was time to set some boundaries, no matter the consequences. The alarm blared at 3:30 a.m., jolting me awake. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Hank, and crept downstairs. As I reached for my car keys, the kitchen light flicked on. And where do you think you're going? Edna's voice was cold as ice. I steeled myself. To work, Edna. I told you I have an early shift today. Her eyes narrowed. Abandoning your family again, I see. Hank will be so disappointed. I bit back a retort and left, her words echoing in my head as I drove to the bakery. Hours later, covered in flour and exhausted, I returned home to chaos. Hank was pacing the living room, looking frantic. Amy, where have you been? I've been calling for hours. Before I could explain, Edna swooped in. Oh, Hank, I told you she doesn't care about us anymore, off gallivanting while we're dealing with a crisis. My heart dropped. What crisis? What's happened? Hank ran a hand through his hair. It's Lila. She's in the hospital. She fell down the stairs this morning. Guilt washed over me. If I'd been here, I'm so sorry, I whispered. Is she okay? No thanks to you, Edna snapped. If you'd been here to help her down the stairs like you're supposed to, this never would have happened. I stared at her, incredulous. Help her down the stairs? Lila's a grown woman, not an invalid. Hank held up his hands. Enough. We need to get to the hospital. Amy, are you coming or not? The drive to the hospital was tense. When we arrived, we found Lila in a hospital bed, her arm in a cast but otherwise looking fine. Oh, Amy, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. If only you'd been there to help me. I called out, but of course you were gone. I felt Hank stiffen beside me. You called out? Why didn't you tell me that before, Lila? She batted her eyelashes. I didn't want to worry you, big brother. I know how stressed you've been lately. As Hank fussed over Lila, Edna cornered me in the hallway. I hope you're satisfied, she hissed. Your selfishness nearly cost Lila her life. Something in me snapped. That's enough, Edna. We both know Lila's faking the severity of her fall. This manipulation has to stop. Edna's face turned purple with rage. How dare you, after everything we've done for you? Our raised voices drew Hank's attention. He emerged from Lila's room, looking confused. "What's going on out here?" I took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Hank, we need to talk, in private." We found an empty waiting room. I poured out everything, the constant criticism, the unreasonable demands, the emotional manipulation. Hank listened, his face growing more troubled with each word. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked softly. "I didn't want to put you in the middle," I admitted. "I know how much your family means to you." Hank was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, determination in his eyes. "This ends now. I'm going to talk to Mom and Lila." Hope bloomed in my chest as I watched him stride towards Lila's room. But as he opened the door, I heard Edna's voice, thick with tears. "Oh, Hank, thank goodness you're here. Amy, she said such horrible things, accusing poor Lila of lying about her fall. How could she be so cruel?" I froze, realizing too late the trap I'd walked into. Hank turned to me, his eyes filled with disappointment and anger. "Is this true, Amy? Did you really accuse my injured sister of lying?" In that moment, I saw my marriage balanced on a knife's edge. I could backpedal, try to smooth things over, or I could stand my ground and fight for the truth, even if it meant losing everything. Taking a deep breath, I made my choice. "Yes, Hank, I did, and I'll tell you why." I stood in the hospital hallway, my heart pounding as Hank's eyes bored into mine. The moment of truth had arrived, and I knew there was no going back. "Hank," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "I need you to listen to me. Really listen. What's been happening in that house isn't right, and it's tearing us apart." His brow furrowed, but he nodded for me to continue. I took a deep breath and laid it all out. The constant criticism, the unreasonable demands, the emotional manipulation. With each word, I saw the confusion in Hank's eyes slowly turn to disbelief, then to anger. That's not possible," he stammered. "Mom and Lila wouldn't do that." Just then, Edna's shrill voice cut through the air. "Hank, come quick, Lila's in pain." We rushed back to Lila's room, where she lay dramatically clutching her side. "Oh, Amy," she whimpered. "If only you'd been there to help me this morning. The doctor says I might have internal bleeding." I felt the blood drain from my face. This was a new low, even for Lila. "That's not true," I said firmly. "I was just talking to the doctor. He said you had a minor sprain." Hank's head whipped between us, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. Edna seized the moment, her voice dripping with venom. "Are you calling my daughter a liar, Amy? How dare you?" The room seemed to close in around me. I could see Hank's resolve wavering, torn between his loyalty to his family and his trust in me. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice, stay and fight a losing battle or walk away to save my own sanity. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Then, louder, "I'm leaving." The room fell silent. Hank reached for me, his eyes wide with panic. "Amy, wait." But I was already moving, my feet carrying me out of the room, down the hallway, out of the hospital. The cool night air hit my face as I burst through the doors, gulping in deep breaths. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. What had I done? Where would I go? As I pulled into the driveway, I saw the lights on in the house. Edna must have called ahead. Steeling myself, I walked inside. Lila was there, her arm miraculously healed enough to fold laundry. Edna stood in the kitchen, a look of smug satisfaction on her face. Well, she said. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence." I ignored her, heading straight for the stairs. In our bedroom, I began throwing clothes into a suitcase, my hands shaking. "Amy?" Hank's voice came from the doorway. "What are you doing?" I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry, Hank. I can't live like this anymore. I love you, but I can't stay in this house another minute." His face crumpled. "Please, Amy. We can work this out. I'll talk to Mom and Lila, I promise." But I could see the doubt in his eyes. He still didn't fully believe me, still couldn't see the truth about his family. "I need some time," I said, zipping up my suitcase. "I'll be at my sister's. When you're ready to really hear me, to see what's been happening, you know where to find me." As I walked down the stairs, suitcase in hand, Edna and Lila watched with matching expressions of triumph. But I held my head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. At the front door, I paused, looking back at Hank. He stood frozen at the top of the stairs, torn between following me and staying with his family. "I love you," I said softly, "but I love myself too, and I won't let anyone destroy that, not even for you." With those words, I walked out into the night, leaving behind the house that had become my prison. As I drove away, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The ball was in Hank's court now. Would he finally see the truth? Or had I just lost everything I held dear? 3 days had passed since I'd left Hank and his family. I sat in my sister's guest room, staring at my silent phone, willing it to ring. The waiting was excruciating, but I knew I had to stand my ground. A knock at the door startled me. My sister Sarah poked her head in. "Amy, there's someone here to see you." My heart leaped. Could it be Hank? I rushed downstairs, hope blooming in my chest, but as I reached the living room, that hope withered and died. Edna stood there, her face a mask of concern. "Oh, Amy," she cooed, "we've been so worried about you." I felt my body go rigid. "What are you doing here, Edna?" She stepped closer, her voice low. "I've come to bring you home, dear. Hank is beside himself with grief. He needs you." For a moment, I wavered. The thought of Hank in pain was almost unbearable. But then I saw the glint in Edna's eyes, the barely concealed triumph. "No," I said firmly, "I'm not going anywhere with you." Edna's facade cracked. "Now listen here, you ungrateful little—" "Is there a problem?" Sarah's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, glaring at Edna. Edna's smile returned, sickeningly sweet. "Not at all. I was just leaving." She turned to me. "Think about what you're throwing away, Amy. Hank won't wait forever." As the door closed behind her, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Sarah sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "You did the right thing," she murmured. "Stay strong." Hours later, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, my phone buzzed. A text from Hank. "Can we talk, please?" My fingers hovered over the keys. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to protect myself from more pain, but I knew we needed to have this conversation. "Tomorrow, noon, the park by the lake." The next day, I arrived at the park early, my stomach in knots. I spotted Hank on a bench, looking as haggard as I felt. "Amy," he breathed, standing as I approached. "I'm so sorry for everything." I held up a hand, stopping him. "Before you say anything else, I need you to listen. Really listen." For the next hour, I laid it all out. Every cruel comment, every unreasonable demand, every manipulation. I showed him texts and emails, recounted conversations. With each revelation, I saw the color drain from Hank's face. "I had no idea," he whispered, his voice breaking. "How could I have been so blind?" "Because they're your family," I said softly, "and you love them." Hank reached for my hand, his eyes pleading. "I love you, Amy. More than anything. Please come home. We'll face this together. I'll set boundaries, I promise." I wanted so badly to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. "And what happens the next time Lila needs something? Or your mother guilt trips you? Can you really stand up to them?" His silence was deafening. "I can't go back to that house, Hank," I said, my voice trembling. "I won't survive it." Hank's face crumpled. Then I'll leave. We'll get our own place. Start fresh." I stared at him, hardly daring to hope. "You'd do that? Leave your family?" He nodded, determination replacing the anguish in his eyes. "You're my family, Amy. You're my home. I choose you." Tears spilled down my cheeks as Hank pulled me into his arms. For the first time in months, I felt safe, loved, understood. But as we clung to each other, a chill ran down my spine. I knew this was far from over. Edna and Lila wouldn't let us go without a fight. As if on cue, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this, Amy. No one takes my son away from me." I showed the message to Hank, watching his face harden with resolve. "We're in this together," he said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a team." I nodded, squaring my shoulders. The real battle was just beginning. But this time I wasn't fighting alone. My hands trembled as Hank and I stood on the doorstep of his childhood home. We'd come to collect our belongings and make a final stand against Edna and Lila's manipulation. The air felt thick with tension as Hank rang the doorbell. Edna answered, her face a mask of concern. "Oh, Hank, thank goodness you're home. We've been so worried." Her eyes narrowed when she saw me. "Amy, I see you've brought her back." Hank's voice was firm. "Mom, we need to talk. All of us." We followed Edna into the living room where Lila sat, her arm miraculously healed. The sight of her smug smile made my blood boil. "What's this about?" Edna demanded, her saccharine tone evaporating. Hank took a deep breath. "Amy and I are leaving, for good. We're getting our own place." The room fell silent. Then Edna laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Don't be ridiculous, Hank. This is your home. Your family needs you." "No, Mom," Hank said, his voice steady. "What I need is to be with my wife, away from the manipulation and abuse," Lila gasped dramatically. "Abuse? How dare you, after everything we've done for you both?" I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Everything you've done? You mean like treating me like a servant? Constantly criticizing and belittling me? Faking injuries to guilt-trip us?" Edna's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little witch! You've poisoned my son against us!" She lunged at me, but Hank stepped between us. "That's enough, Mom. I've seen the truth now. The way you've treated Amy, the way you've tried to control me. It stops today." Lila burst into tears. "How can you do this to us, Hank? We're your family." "Amy is my family now," Hank replied, his voice softening. "I love you both, but I won't let you destroy my marriage." Edna's demeanor changed instantly, her voice dripping with honey. "Darling, we only want what's best for you. Amy clearly doesn't understand our family dynamics. Give it time. She'll adjust." I felt a surge of pride as Hank shook his head. "No, Mom. There's nothing to adjust to. Amy and I are leaving. We've already found an apartment across town." The shock on Edna and Lila's faces was almost comical. As Hank and I moved to gather our things, they followed, alternating between pleas and threats. "You'll regret this, Hank," Edna hissed. "When she leaves you, don't come crawling back." Hank paused at the foot of the stairs, turning to face his mother and sister. "The only thing I regret is not seeing the truth sooner. Goodbye, Mom. Lila, I hope someday you'll understand." As we loaded the last of our boxes into the car, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Hank pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. He smiled, a mix of sadness and relief in his eyes. "I'm proud of us. It won't be easy, but we're in this together." As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt hope blooming in my chest. We pulled up to our new apartment, a modest one-bedroom that already felt more like home than the house we'd left behind. As we carried our boxes inside, I caught Hank looking at me, his eyes shining with love and determination. "You know," he said, setting down a box, "in a way, we should thank my mom and Lila." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and why's that?" He pulled me into his arms. "Because they showed us how strong we are together. We faced the worst and came out stronger. Nothing can tear us apart now." Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged him fiercely. He was right. We'd weathered a storm that could have destroyed us, and instead it had forged our bond into something unbreakable. As we unpacked, filling our new home with laughter and love, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. Hank and I had reclaimed our lives, our relationship, and our future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger and wiser for the battle we'd won. And as the sun set on our first night in our new home, I knew that the best was yet to come. The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp folds mocking the shattered pieces of my heart. I stood frozen in Richard's office, the scent of his cologne mingling with the acrid taste of betrayal in my mouth. "Sophia, are you in there?" Richard's voice echoed from the hallway, jolting me back to reality. I hastily shoved the letter into my pocket, smoothing my hair and plastering on a smile as he entered the room. "Hey, honey, I was just looking for that recipe book I lent you." Richard's brow furrowed. "Oh, right. I think it's in one of these drawers." He moved towards his desk, and I felt my pulse quicken. "No worries, I'll find it later," I said, my voice unnaturally high. "How about we go out for dinner tonight? It's been a while since we've had a date night." Richard's eyes darted to his phone. "Actually, Emily just texted. She wants us to pick her up from the airport. Her flight got moved up." "Of course. Emily." I swallowed hard, forcing my smile to stay in place. "That's great. I'll whip up something quick for dinner then." As we drove to the airport, my mind raced. Who was she? How long had it been going on? The words from the letter burned in my memory. "My dearest Richard, these stolen moments with you are never enough." Emily's squeal pierced through my thoughts as she bounded towards us, her designer luggage trailing behind her. "Big brother!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Richard. I hung back, watching as they embraced. Emily's eyes finally landed on me, her smile dimming slightly. "Oh, hi, Sophia." "Welcome home, Emily," I said, reaching for her bag. "Here, let me help." "I've got it." she snapped, yanking the handle from my grasp. I'm not helpless, you know. The drive home was filled with Emily's chatter about her adventures abroad, punctuated by Richard's laughter and encouragement. I sat silently in the back seat, the letter a lead weight in my pocket. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked on the street. "Oh, your parents are here," I said, my stomach knotting with dread. Emily rolled her eyes. "Great. I bet Mom's gonna fuss over me all night." If only she knew how lucky she was, I thought bitterly. Inside, Judy and Mark greeted us warmly, though I couldn't help but notice the strain in Judy's smile and the slight tremor in Mark's hands as he hugged Emily. "Sophia, dear," Judy said, turning to me, "would you mind helping me in the kitchen? I brought some casseroles, but they need reheating." I nodded, grateful for the escape. As we worked side by side, Judy's movements were slow and deliberate, her arthritis clearly flaring up. "How are you feeling, Judy?" I asked gently. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how it is. These old bones aren't what they used to be." She paused, her voice lowering. "Mark's been having some trouble, too. His memory, well, it's not great." My heart sank. I opened my mouth to respond, but Richard's voice cut through the air. "Sophia, where's dinner? Emily's starving after her long flight." I exchanged a weary glance with Judy before calling back, "Coming right up." As I carried the steaming dishes to the dining room, I overheard Emily's hushed voice. "I don't know why you put up with her, Richard. She's so ordinary." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Richard's response was too low to hear, but his chuckle sent ice through my veins. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door, my smile firmly in place. "Dinner's ready, everyone." As I sat down at the table, surrounded by the family I'd given everything for, I felt the weight of the letter in my pocket. Something had to change. I just didn't know what or how yet. I stared at my resignation letter, my finger hovering over the send button. The cursor blinked accusingly, as if asking, "Are you sure about this, Sophia?" No, I wasn't sure, but Richard's words from last night echoed in my head. "Honey, don't you think it's time you focused on our home? My sister and parents need you. We need you." With a deep breath, I clicked send. Just like that, my career vanished into the ether. The bedroom door creaked open, and Richard's head poked in. "Everything okay? You've been in here a while." I forced a smile. "All done. I've officially resigned." His face lit up as he crossed the room, enveloping me in a hug that felt more suffocating than comforting. "That's my girl. You're doing the right thing, Sophia. This is what's best for our family." Our family. The word stung, reminding me of the letter hidden in my dresser drawer. I pulled away, busying myself with organizing the desk. "So, when do we move in with your parents?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "This weekend," Richard replied. "Emily's already there helping them pack up some things." Of course she was. I back a sarcastic remark. That's thoughtful of her. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a small frown creasing his brow. "Speaking of Emily, she needs some help. In fact, I'm going to head over there now. You'll be okay packing up here, right?" Before I could respond, he was already halfway out the door, leaving me alone with the echoes of my shattered dreams. The next few days passed in a blur of cardboard boxes and packing tape. By Saturday morning, we were pulling into Richard's parents' driveway, our car laden with the remnants of our old life. Emily stood on the porch, her arms crossed. "Finally! I've been waiting all morning. There's so much to do, and Mom and Dad are useless." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was for the best, for the family. As we unloaded the car, I noticed Mark struggling with a box, his hands shaking. I rushed over, gently taking it from him. "Let me help you with that, Mark." He looked at me, confusion clouding his eyes. Who are you again?" My heart sank. Judy had mentioned his memory issues, but I hadn't realized how bad they'd gotten. "It's me, Sophia, Richard's wife," I said softly. Recognition flickered in his gaze. "Oh, yes, of course. Thank you, dear." From behind us, Emily's voice rang out. "Sophia, stop chatting and come help me with these curtains. They're not going to hang themselves." I shared a weary glance with Mark before heading inside. Judy was in the kitchen, attempting to prepare lunch with trembling hands. "Here, let me take over," I offered, gently guiding her to a chair. She sighed gratefully. "You're a godsend, Sophia. I don't know how we'd manage without you." As I chopped vegetables, I couldn't help but wonder, how had they been managing before? And why was it suddenly my responsibility? The day wore on, filled with unpacking, organizing, and a constant stream of demands from Emily. By evening, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. I found Richard in the study, engrossed in his laptop. "Hey," I said softly, "I was thinking maybe we could order in tonight. Everyone's tired and—" "No need," he interrupted, not looking up. "Emily's already started cooking. She says you've been too busy to handle dinner." I stood there, stunned. "But I've been unpacking all day. When did she—" "Look, Sophia," Richard said, finally meeting my gaze. "I know this is an adjustment, but Emily's really stepping up. Maybe you could learn a thing or two from her, yeah?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to argue, to defend myself, but the fight drained out of me. What was the point? As I turned to leave, my eye caught a glimpse of Richard's phone screen. A text message preview glowed ominously. "Missing you already. Can't wait for our next." The rest was cut off, but it was enough. My suspicions confirmed, I stumbled out of the room, my world tilting on its axis. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. What had I done? I'd given up everything. My career, my independence, for a man who didn't even respect me enough to hide his infidelity. From the kitchen, I heard Emily's laughter, punctuated by the clatter of pots and pans. This was my life now. But for how long? As I straightened up, wiping away a stray tear, I made a silent vow. This wouldn't be forever. Somehow, someway, I would find a way out. I had to. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, mocking my sleepless night. I'd spent hours tossing and turning, Richard's infidelity and Emily's constant demands swirling in my mind. Now, as I prepared breakfast for the household, exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. "Sophia!" Emily's shrill voice pierced the air. "Where's my green smoothie?" I bit back a sigh. "Coming, Emily. Just finishing up Mark's oatmeal." She appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "I need it now. I have yoga in 20 minutes. "Of course," I muttered, abandoning the oatmeal to blend her smoothie. As I handed her the glass, she wrinkled her nose. "Ah, did you use the right protein powder? This looks off." Before I could respond, Judy shuffled into the kitchen, her movements slow and pained. "Good morning, dears. Sophia, have you seen my pills? I can't seem to find them." "They're on your nightstand, Mom," Emily said, rolling her eyes. "Sophia, shouldn't you have reminded her?" I clenched my jaw, forcing a smile. "I'll go get them for you, Judy." As I climbed the stairs, I heard Emily's voice drift up. "Honestly, what would you do without me? Sophia's so scatterbrained lately." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. The day dragged on, a blur of chores and thinly veiled insults. By afternoon, I was desperate for a moment of peace. I slipped out to the garden, hoping to catch my breath. To my surprise, Mark was there, staring at a rosebush with a puzzled expression. "Mark?" I approached him cautiously. "Are you okay?" He turned to me, confusion clouding his eyes. I can't remember how to prune these. I've done it for years, but now—" My heart ached for him. "It's all right," I said gently. "Why don't we do it together?" As we worked side by side, Mark's hands steadied. He smiled at me, a glimmer of his old self shining through. "You know, you remind me of someone. Someone kind." "It's me, Mark, Sophia," I reminded him softly. Recognition flickered in his gaze. "Ah, yes, Richard's wife. You're a good girl, Sophia. Don't let them change you." Before I could ask what he meant, Emily's voice shattered the moment. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere. The living room needs vacuuming, and Richard wants to know what's for dinner." I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "I'll be right there." As I turned to go, Mark grabbed my hand. "Remember," he whispered, "you're stronger than they know." His words echoed in my mind as I trudged back to the house. Was I strong? Or was I just a doormat? That evening, as I prepared dinner, Richard sauntered into the kitchen. "Smells good in here," he said, reaching for a taste. I swatted his hand away playfully, almost forgetting our problems for a moment. "You'll have to wait like everyone else." He chuckled, then his expression turned serious. "Listen, Sophia, I've been thinking. Maybe we should look into getting some help around here." My heart leapt. Finally, he was seeing how overwhelmed I was. "That would be wonderful," I started, but he cut me off. "Great. I'll ask Emily to start interviewing housekeepers tomorrow. You could use the extra hand, and it'll free you up to focus more on Mom and Dad's care." The knife I was holding clattered to the counter. "What? But I thought—" Richard frowned. "Thought what?" This is the perfect solution. Emily's got great taste. She'll find someone suitable. As if summoned, Emily breezed into the kitchen. Ooh, are we talking about the new housekeeper? I have some great candidates in mind already. I stood there, stunned, as they discussed my replacement as if I weren't even in the room. The injustice of it all bubbled up inside me, threatening to spill over. No, I said quietly. They both turned to look at me. What was that? Richard asked. I took a deep breath, Mark's words echoing in my ears. You're stronger than they know. I said no, I won't be pushed aside in my own home. If anyone's going to hire help, it'll be me. Emily's eyes widened in shock, while Richard's narrowed dangerously. Sophia, he said, his voice low and warning. Don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. I met his gaze, standing my ground. Are you, or are you just trying to replace me? The tension in the room was palpable, crackling like electricity. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of my old self igniting. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The days following my stand in the kitchen blurred together in a haze of tension and icy silence. Richard barely looked at me, while Emily's demands grew more outrageous by the hour. But I refused to back down. I was done being their doormat. One morning, as I was helping Judy with her physical therapy exercises, Emily burst into the room, her face flushed with anger. Sophia, why isn't my laundry done? I need my blue dress for tonight's party. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm sorry, Emily, but I'm busy helping your mother right now. Your laundry will have to wait. Emily's eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me, I don't think you understand your place here. You're nothing but a glorified maid. The words stung, but I held my ground. I'm Richard's wife and your sister-in-law. I'm here to help your parents, not to be your personal servant. How dare you? Emily shrieked. She turned to Judy, who was watching the exchange with wide, fearful eyes. Mom, are you hearing this? She's refusing to do her job. Judy opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked between us, helpless and confused. That's enough, I snapped, my patience finally breaking. Judy needs her rest. We can discuss this later. I ushered Emily out of the room, ignoring her protests. As I closed the door behind us, I came face to face with Richard. What's going on here? He demanded, his eyes cold. Emily immediately latched onto his arm. Richard, Sophia is being impossible. She won't do my laundry, and she was so rude to Mom. I felt a flicker of hope as Richard turned to me. Surely he'd see through Emily's lies. But my heart sank as I saw the familiar look of disappointment settle on his face. Sophia, we've talked about this, he said, his voice low and threatening. Your job is to take care of this family, all of us. Is that really so hard to understand? Something inside me snapped. My job? My job? I gave up my career for this family. I've been cooking, cleaning, and caring for your parents around the clock. And what have you done, Richard, besides favoring your sister and sneaking around with other women? The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. Richard's face paled, while Emily gasped dramatically. What are you talking about? Richard sputtered, but the guilt in his eyes gave him away. I laughed bitterly. I found the letter, Richard. I know about your affair. How long has it been going on? Does Emily know? Does she approve of her perfect brother cheating on his wife? That Emily's shocked expression quickly morphed into a sneer. Well, can you blame him? Look at you, Sophia. You're hardly wife material anymore. Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them see me cry. I'm done, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. Done with both of you and your manipulations. I'm here for Judy and Mark, not to be your punching bag. I turned on my heel and stormed off, leaving them gaping in the hallway. As I reached the sanctuary of my room, I heard Richard's footsteps behind me. Sophia, wait, he called, his voice softer now. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. I whirled around to face him. Work what out, Richard? Your affair? The way you and Emily treat me? Or the fact that I've become nothing more than a servant in my own home? He reached for me, but I stepped back. I love you, Sophia. You know that, right? For a moment, I wavered. Part of me wanted to believe him, to fall into his arms and pretend everything was okay. But then I remembered the letter, Emily's cruel words, and the countless times he'd chosen his sister over me. No, Richard, I said quietly. I don't think you do. And I'm not sure I love you anymore either. The shock on his face was almost comical. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. I need time to think, I said. About us, about this whole situation. I can't keep living like this. As I closed the door in his face, I leaned against it, my heart pounding. I'd finally said the words I'd been holding back for so long. Now I had a decision to make. Stay and continue this charade of a marriage, or find the strength to walk away and reclaim my life. Whatever I chose, I knew one thing for certain: things would never be the same again. The tension in the house was palpable as I prepared for the weekly family dinner. My confrontation with Richard and Emily had left an uneasy truce, but I knew it was only a matter of time before something snapped. As I set the table, my hands trembling slightly, Judy shuffled into the dining room. "Sophia, dear," she said, her voice weak. "I'm not feeling well. I don't think I can make it to dinner." I rushed to her side, concern etched on my face. "What's wrong, Judy? Do you need to see a doctor?" She waved me off. No, just tired. But could you bring me some soup later?" I nodded, helping her back to her room. As I tucked her in, she grabbed my hand. "You're a good girl, Sophia. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Her words warmed my heart, but as I closed her door, I heard Emily's shrill voice from downstairs. "Sophia? Where's dinner? We're all waiting." Taking a deep breath, I descended the stairs. Richard, Emily, and Mark were already seated at the table, looking impatient. "Sorry for the delay," I said, placing the dishes on the table. "Judy isn't feeling well, so she'll be eating in her room." Emily rolled her eyes. "Typical. She's always finding excuses to avoid family time." I bit my tongue, focusing on serving the food instead of responding to her callousness. As we ate, the silence was oppressive. Richard kept glancing at his phone, while Emily picked at her food with a look of disdain. Finally, Mark spoke up. "This is delicious, Sophia. You've outdone yourself." I smiled gratefully at him, but Emily scoffed. "Please, Dad, it's just pot roast. Anyone could make this." "Then why don't you try cooking sometime?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. Emily's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Me? Cook? That's what we keep you around for, isn't it?" Richard cleared his throat. "Emily, that's enough." For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Was he finally going to stand up for me? But then he continued, "Sophia knows her role in this family. There's no need to remind her." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "My role?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "And what exactly is that, Richard? To be your personal maid? Your punching bag?" Emily smirked. "Well, you're certainly not here for your sparkling personality." Something inside me snapped. "That's rich coming from you, Emily, the perpetual child who can't even do her own laundry. And you," I turned to Richard, "the cheating husband who can't see past his sister's manipulations. You two deserve each other." The room fell silent, shock written across their faces. Even Mark looked up from his plate, a hint of pride in his eyes. Richard stood slowly, his face red with anger. "Sophia, I think you need to calm down and remember your place." "My place?" I laughed bitterly. "I gave up everything for this family. My career, my independence, my self-respect. And for what? To be treated like dirt?" I turned to leave, but Emily's voice stopped me. "Go ahead, run away. It's what you're good at. You can't handle being part of this family because you know you'll never truly belong." Her words cut deep, but as I looked at their smug faces, something shifted inside me. I was done being their victim. "You're right, Emily," I said calmly. "I don't belong in this toxic environment, and it's about time I did something about it." With that, I walked out of the dining room, ignoring Richard's calls for me to come back. As I climbed the stairs, a plan began to form in my mind. I couldn't leave Judy and Mark in this hellish situation, but I couldn't stay either. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. My old colleague from the nursing home where I used to volunteer. As the phone rang, I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. "Hello?" a friendly voice answered. "Hi, Sarah," I said, my voice steady with newfound determination. "It's Sophia. I need your help with something." As I explained my plan, a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was taking back control of my life. Starting now. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of secret phone calls and clandestine meetings. Sarah had come through with information on Sunset Grove, a top-rated nursing home known for its compassionate care. It was perfect for Judy and Mark, but the cost was astronomical. I knew what I had to do. One afternoon, while Richard was at work and Emily was out shopping, I slipped into the study. My hands shook as I logged into the family's joint account. The balance made my eyes widen. Years of Richard's successful career had left a substantial nest egg. I took a deep breath and initiated the transfer. As I watched the funds move, guilt gnawed at me. Was I doing the right thing? But then I remembered Judy's frail form, Mark's confused eyes, and the constant barrage of insults from Richard and Emily. This wasn't just about me anymore. The next day, I took Judy and Mark for a day trip to Sunset Grove. As we toured the facility, I watched their faces carefully. "It's lovely here," Judy said, her eyes bright for the first time in months. "So peaceful." Mark nodded, actually smiling. "Reminds me of our first home, doesn't it, dear?" My heart swelled. This was the right decision. As we prepared to leave, I pulled the director aside. "They'll be moving in next week," I whispered. "I've already made the arrangements." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "We'll take good care of them, Mrs. Thompson." Back at home, I threw myself into preparations. I packed Judy and Mark's belongings bit by bit, hiding suitcases in the back of my car. Richard and Emily were too self-absorbed to notice anything amiss. The night before the big move, I sat with Judy and Mark in their room, my heart heavy. "I need to tell you something," I began, my voice trembling. "Tomorrow you're going to move to Sunset Grove. Permanently." Judy gasped while Mark looked confused. I hurried on. "It's for the best. You'll be well cared for there, away from all of this." To my surprise, Judy reached out and squeezed my hand. "We know, dear. We've seen how they treat you. This isn't the life we wanted for any of us." Tears sprang to my eyes. "You knew?" Mark nodded slowly. "We may be old, but we're not blind. You're doing the right thing, Sophia." Their understanding and support overwhelmed me. I hugged them both, choking back sobs. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Richard was still asleep, oblivious to the upheaval about to occur. I helped Judy and Mark dress and guided them quietly to my car. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of the house in my rearview mirror. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going through with this? Then Emily's cruel words echoed in my mind, "You'll never truly belong." My resolve hardened. There was no turning back now. At Sunset Grove, the staff welcomed Judy and Mark warmly. As I helped them settle into their new room, a weight lifted from my shoulders. They would be safe here, cared for properly. "Sophia," Judy said as I prepared to leave. "What about you? Where will you go?" I forced a smile. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." But as I walked to my car, panic set in. What had I done? I'd spent nearly all of our savings, relocated Richard's parents without his knowledge, and was about to blow up my entire life. For a moment, I considered driving back, begging forgiveness, and trying to undo it all. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Where are you? Mom and Dad aren't in their room. Emily's furious that breakfast isn't ready." In that moment, everything crystallized. I couldn't go back. Not to that life, not to that version of myself. With shaking hands, I typed out a response. "We need to talk. I'm on my way home." As I drove back to the house, my mind raced. How would Richard react? What would Emily do? But beneath the fear, a spark of excitement ignited. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it head on. My hands shook as I pulled into the driveway. Richard's car was there, and I could see Emily's silhouette pacing in the living room. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Before I could reach the front door, it flew open. Richard stood there, his face a mask of fury. "Where the hell have you been?" he growled. "And where are my parents?" I squared my shoulders and met his gaze. "We need to talk, all of us." Emily appeared behind him, her eyes narrowed. "What have you done, Sophia?" I brushed past them and walked into the living room. My heart was pounding, but I refused to show fear. "Sit down," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Reluctantly, they complied. I remained standing, drawing strength from my newfound resolve. "Judy and Mark are safe," I began. "They're at Sunset Grove Nursing Home. I moved them there this morning." The explosion was immediate. Richard leapt to his feet, his face red with rage. "You did what? How dare you make decisions about my parents without consulting me?" Emily's shrill voice joined in. "I knew it. I knew you were up to something. You had no right." I held up my hand, silencing them both. I had every right. I've been the one taking care of them day in and day out while you two barely acknowledge their existence. They deserve better than this toxic environment. Richard's eyes narrowed dangerously. And how exactly did you pay for this nursing home? Here it was, the moment of no return. I used the money from our joint account. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Richard exploded again, his voice rising to a roar. You stole from me? That's my money, Sophia! Mine! Our money, I corrected, my voice ice cold. Or have you forgotten that I gave up my career to be here? To take care of your family while you gallivanted around with other women? Emily gasped, her eyes darting between Richard and me. What is she talking about, Richard? I laughed bitterly. Oh, he didn't tell you? Your perfect brother has been cheating on me. I found the letter, Richard. I know everything. Richard's face paled, then flushed with anger. You had no right to go through my things. And you had no right to betray our marriage. I shot back. Emily, for once, seemed at a loss for words. She sank back into the couch, her smug expression replaced by shock. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. I'm leaving, Richard. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Richard stared at me, disbelief etched on his face. You can't be serious, after everything I've done for you? I laughed, a hollow sound. Done for me? You've belittled me, ignored me, and treated me like a servant. Well, I'm done. I deserve better than this, better than you. I turned to Emily, who was still sitting in stunned silence. And you? I tried so hard to be a sister to you, but you never saw me as anything more than the help. I hope you're happy with the mess you've made. With shaking hands, I pulled out an envelope from my purse. This is my farewell letter. It explains everything, where Judy and Mark are, why I left, and what I've done with the money. I've left enough in the account for you to live on while you figure things out. I placed the envelope on the coffee table and turned to leave. Richard grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. You can't just walk away from this family, Sophia. We need you. For a moment, I wavered. Years of conditioning made me want to give in, to apologize, and try to make things right. But then I remembered the peace on Judy and Mark's faces at Sunset Grove, the way I felt when I finally stood up for myself. I wrenched my arm free. No, Richard, you don't need me. You need a punching bag, a scapegoat, and I won't be that anymore. With those words, I walked out of the house, ignoring Richard's shouts and Emily's sudden desperate pleas for me to come back. As I got into my car, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I saw strength in my eyes. As I drove away, leaving behind the life I'd known, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free. 6 months had passed since I'd walked out of Richard's life. I stood in front of the mirror in my new apartment, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. Gone was the timid, beaten-down housewife. In her place stood a confident, self-assured professional. My phone buzzed with a text from Tina, my new colleague and fast friend. Ready for the big presentation? I smiled, typing back a quick, "You bet." Before I could set the phone down, it rang. The caller ID made my heart skip a beat. Sunset Grove. Hello? I answered, my voice tight with worry. Mrs. Thompson? The nurse's voice was gentle. I'm calling about your in-laws, Judy and Mark. They've been asking to see you. I hesitated, memories of my last confrontation with Richard flooding back. Are they okay? They're fine, she assured me. But they miss you. And there's someone else here to see you too. My breath caught in my throat. Who? It's Emily, Richard's sister. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emily? Here? After everything that had happened? I'll be there in an hour, I heard myself say. The drive to Sunset Grove was a blur of conflicting emotions. As I walked through the familiar doors, I steeled myself for whatever was coming. I found them in the garden, Judy and Mark sitting on a bench, with Emily pacing nearby. When she saw me, she froze. Sophia, she breathed, her eyes wide. You came. I nodded stiffly, turning my attention to Judy and Mark. Their faces lit up as I approached, and I felt a pang of guilt for staying away so long. Oh, Sophia, Judy cried, reaching for my hand. We've missed you so much. Mark nodded, his eyes clearer than I'd seen them in years. You did right by us, girl. We're happy here. Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged them both. When I straightened, I found Emily watching us, her expression unreadable. Can we talk? She asked softly. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We walked to a quiet corner of the garden, tension thick between us. "I owe you an apology," Emily began, her voice shaking. "I was horrible to you, Sophia. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you. I'm so sorry." I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the Emily I knew. "What changed?" I asked cautiously. She laughed bitterly. "After you left, Richard fell apart. He couldn't handle the simplest tasks without you. And I realized how much we'd both taken you for granted." My heart clenched. "And Richard, where is he now?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "He's in rehab. The drinking got bad after you left, but he's getting help now. He wants to make amends if you'll let him." I took a deep breath, processing this information. "I'm glad he's getting help, but I can't go back, Emily. That life, it nearly destroyed me." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I know, and I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know how sorry we are, and how much you've taught us." As we walked back to Judy and Mark, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The anger and resentment I'd been carrying began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace. "Will you visit more often?" Judy asked hopefully as we said our goodbyes. I smiled, squeezing her hand. "I will. I promise." As I drove home, my phone buzzed again. It was Tina, reminding me about our presentation. I realized with a start that I'd almost forgotten about work in the emotional whirlwind of the day. But as I walked into the office, head held high, I felt a surge of pride. This was my life now, a life I'd built for myself, on my own terms. The presentation went flawlessly. As my colleagues congratulated me, I caught my reflection in the conference room window. The woman looking back at me was strong, capable, and unafraid. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I thought about how far I'd come. I'd lost a husband, but I'd gained myself. I'd walked away from a toxic situation and built a new life from the ashes of the old. My phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Emily. "Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like." I smiled, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it would lead. I had risen from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. The glare from my laptop screen burned my eyes as I stared at the words, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. My hands trembled, hovering over the keyboard. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. "Lucy, are you coming to bed?" Owen's voice drifted down the hallway, snapping me out of my trance. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding. "Just a minute!" I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. As I made my way to our bedroom, my mind raced. The email I'd stumbled upon was unmistakably from my husband to my sister Helen. The words passionate, longing, and our secret jumped out at me, searing themselves into my brain. Owen was already under the covers when I entered, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he scrolled through his phone. He looked up and smiled, the same smile I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. "Everything okay, hon?" I forced a smile. "Fine. Just lost track of time." As I slipped into bed beside him, I couldn't help but study his face. Was there any hint of guilt? Any sign that he was living a double life? But all I saw was the same Owen I'd always known. Kind eyes, slightly crooked nose from a childhood accident, and that dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. "Helen called earlier," he said casually, setting his phone on the nightstand. "She wants to get together for dinner this weekend. What do you think?" My stomach churned. Oh? Oh, did she say why?" Owen shrugged. "Just to catch up, I guess. It's been a while since we've all gotten together." I turned away, pretending to fluff my pillow to hide the emotions I knew were written all over my face. Maybe. I'll have to check my schedule. "Come on, Luce," Owen said, his hand resting on my shoulder. "It'll be fun. You and Helen used to be so close." I flinched at his touch, memories of the email flooding back. How long had this been going on? How many times had I sat across the dinner table from them, oblivious to their secret glances and hidden touches? "I'm just tired," I mumbled, pulling the covers up to my chin. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." Owen leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Good night, sweetheart, I love you." The words, once a comfort, now felt like daggers in my heart. I lay there in the dark, listening to Owen's breathing slow as he drifted off to sleep. How could he lie there so peacefully while my world was crumbling around me? My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I reached for it, grateful for the distraction. It was a text from Helen. Hey sis, can't wait to see you this weekend. I've got some big news to share. I stared at the message, my vision blurring with unshed tears. What news could she possibly have? Was she going to confess? Or was this some new betrayal? As the night wore on, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, replaying every interaction I'd had with Helen and Owen over the past few months. Had there been signs I'd missed? Moments of tension or awkwardness I'd brushed off? By the time the first rays of sunlight peeked through the curtains, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't confront them yet, not without more evidence. I needed to know the full extent of their betrayal before I made my next move. As Owen's alarm went off and he stirred beside me, I steeled myself for the day ahead. I would play the role of the loving wife and doting sister, all while plotting my revenge. They had no idea what was coming. Morning. Beautiful, Owen murmured, pulling me close for a kiss. I returned the kiss, tasting the bitterness of his lies. Good morning, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. So about dinner with Helen this weekend, I think it's a great idea. The days leading up to our dinner with Helen crawled by, each moment a torturous exercise in maintaining my composure. As I stood in front of the mirror applying a final touch of lipstick, I couldn't help but wonder how long I'd been living this lie. You look beautiful, Owen said, appearing behind me. His hands rested on my shoulders, and I fought the urge to shrug them off. I forced a smile. Thanks, we should get going. The drive to the restaurant was filled with idle chatter about work and neighborhood gossip. As Owen prattled on, my mind wandered to memories of Helen and me as children. We'd been inseparable once, sharing secrets and dreams. When had that changed? Helen was already at the table when we arrived, her face lighting up as she saw us. Lucy! Owen! She exclaimed, jumping up to hug us both. I stiffened at her touch. Memories of the email flooding back. Had she always hugged Owen for a beat too long? As we settled into our seats, Helen couldn't contain her excitement. I have big news, she announced, her eyes sparkling. I'm moving back to town. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I managed to choke out. Owen's reaction was equally surprising. He paled slightly, his fork clattering against his plate. That's unexpected, he said, his voice strained. Helen didn't seem to notice our discomfort. I know, right? It all happened so fast. I got a job offer I couldn't refuse, and, well, I've missed being close to family. Her eyes flicked to Owen for a split second, so quickly I almost missed it, but it was enough to confirm my worst fears. That's wonderful news, Helen, I said, plastering on a smile that felt more like a grimace. Where will you be staying? Oh, I haven't figured that out yet, she replied, waving her hand dismissively. I was hoping I could crash with you guys for a few weeks while I apartment hunt, just like old times, right? The thought of Helen in our house, sleeping under our roof while carrying on an affair with my husband, made me physically ill. I opened my mouth to refuse, but Owen beat me to it. Of course, he said, his voice overly cheerful. We'd love to have you, wouldn't we, Lucy? I felt trapped, cornered by their expectant gazes. Sure, I heard myself say, as if from a great distance, just like old times. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I picked at my food, my appetite gone, as Helen chattered on about her new job and her plans for the move. Owen was uncharacteristically quiet, his eyes darting between Helen and me. As we said our goodbyes in the parking lot, Helen pulled me into another hug. I'm so excited, Luce, she whispered. It'll be just like when we were kids. I pulled away, unable to bear her touch any longer. Yeah, I muttered, just like that. The drive home was silent, the tension between Owen and me palpable. As we pulled into our driveway, I couldn't hold back anymore. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Owen's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What are you talking about? I turned to face him, anger and hurt bubbling up inside me. How long have you been sleeping with my sister? The color drained from Owen's face. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, at a loss for words. I saw the email, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I know everything. Owen's shoulders slumped in defeat. Lucy, we never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake. I laughed bitterly. A mistake? Is that what you call betraying your wife with her own sister? It's over, Owen pleaded. I swear, Lucy, it was just a fling. It didn't mean anything. His words cut deep, each one a fresh wound. And now she's moving in with us, I said, the reality of the situation hitting me anew. How convenient for you both. I got out of the car, slamming the door behind me. As I walked towards the house, I heard Owen calling after me, but I didn't turn back. My mind was racing, piecing together a plan. If they thought they could continue this charade under my own roof, they had another thing coming. I may have been blindsided by their betrayal, but I wouldn't be their fool any longer. It was time to take control of this narrative, and I knew exactly where to start. The day Helen moved in, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I watched from the kitchen window as Owen helped her carry boxes from her car, their easy laughter drifting through the open window. My hands shook as I gripped my coffee mug, knuckles white with the effort of maintaining my composure. "Lucy?" Helen's voice rang out as she entered the kitchen. "Where should I put my toiletries?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Guest bathroom. Top drawer," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. Helen beamed, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Thanks, sis. It's so great to be here. Just like old times, right?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Helen bounded back upstairs, I caught Owen's eye. He looked away quickly, guilt written all over his face. The next few days were a special kind of hell. I found myself hyper-aware of every interaction between Helen and Owen, analyzing every glance, every casual touch. Were they laughing too much at each other's jokes? Did their hands linger too long when passing the salt at dinner? One evening, as I was folding laundry in our bedroom, I overheard them talking in the hallway. "We can't keep doing this," Owen whispered urgently. "Lucy's getting suspicious." Helen's reply was too low for me to hear, but Owen's response made my blood run cold. I know, but we need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things off for a while, at least until you find your own place." I dropped the shirt I was folding, my hands trembling. They were still seeing each other, right under my nose. The next morning, I woke to find a note from Owen on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting. Won't be home for dinner. Love you." The words mocked me, each one a fresh betrayal. As I crumpled the note, Helen breezed into the kitchen. "Morning, Luce. Want to grab lunch later? We haven't had much sister time lately." I stared at her, wondering how she could act so normal, so loving, while destroying my life. "Sorry," I managed. "I have errands to run." Helen's face fell. "Oh, okay. Maybe another time?" I nodded non-committally and fled the house, unable to bear another moment in her presence. I found myself driving aimlessly, eventually ending up at the park where Owen and I had our first date. As I sat on a bench watching families and couples stroll by, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Janet, my mother-in-law. "Lucy, dear, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, tears welling up in my eyes. Janet had always been more of a mother to me than my own. The thought of her disappointment in Owen, in all of us, was almost too much to bear. Before I could talk myself out of it, I hit the call button. "Lucy?" Janet's warm voice answered. "Is everything all right?" And just like that, the dam broke. Through sobs, I poured out the whole sordid story. The email, the dinner, Helen moving in, and my suspicions that the affair was ongoing. Janet listened in stunned silence. When I finally ran out of words, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Lucy, I'm so sorry. What can I do?" I took a deep breath, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Can I come over? I don't think I can go back to that house right now." "Of course, dear. I'll put the kettle on." As I drove to Janet's, a plan began to form in my mind. I couldn't confront Owen and Helen yet, not without irrefutable proof. But with Janet's support, I could start gathering evidence. And when the time came to expose their betrayal, I'd be ready. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore, and with Janet by my side, I was ready to reclaim my life and my dignity. The annual family barbecue loomed on the horizon, a day I once looked forward to, but now dreaded. As I stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a salad, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. "Need any help?" Helen's voice startled me, and the knife slipped, nicking my finger. "Damn it!" I hissed, grabbing a paper towel to stem the blood. Helen rushed over, concern etched on her face. "Oh, Lucy, I'm so sorry. Here, let me see." I jerked away from her touch. "I'm fine," I snapped, harsher than I intended. Hurt flashed across Helen's face. "Luce, what's going on? You've been so distant lately. Did I do something wrong?" The irony of her question nearly made me laugh. Instead, I forced a smile. It's nothing, just stressed about the barbecue. Helen nodded, though she didn't look convinced. Well, if you need to talk. Actually, I interrupted, an idea forming. Could you run to the store? We're out of charcoal. Once Helen was gone, I made my move. I'd been waiting for a chance to search her room, and this was it. My heart pounded as I slipped into the guest bedroom, feeling like a thief in my own home. I rifled through drawers and closets, not sure what I was looking for, but knowing I'd recognize it when I saw it. Just as I was about to give up, I spotted Helen's laptop peeking out from under the bed. With shaking hands, I opened it. To my surprise, it wasn't password protected. I clicked on her email, my conscience screaming at me to stop, but I couldn't. I had to know. And there it was. Dozens of emails between Helen and Owen, dating back months. My eyes skimmed over words like love, future, and can't wait to be together. But it was the most recent email that made my blood run cold. We need to tell Lucy soon. I can't keep living this lie. I love you, and I want to start our life together. Owen. The laptop slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future together. My future was being erased, rewritten without me in it. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at nothing, before I heard the front door open. Lucy? I'm back with the charcoal, Helen called. I scrambled to my feet, hastily shoving the laptop back under the bed. As I left the room, I nearly collided with Owen in the hallway. Whoa, careful there, he said, steadying me with his hands. The same hands that had typed those betraying words. What were you doing in Helen's room? I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of the man I thought I knew. Just looking for an extra tablecloth. I lied smoothly. For the barbecue. Owen nodded, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Right, the barbecue. Listen, Lucy, there's something I need to talk to you about after the party. It's important. My heart raced. Was this it? Was he planning to end our marriage at our family gathering? Can't we talk now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Owen shook his head. It's not the right time. After the barbecue, okay? As he walked away, I felt something inside me harden. I'd been passive for too long, waiting for confessions, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. But now I knew the truth, and I wasn't about to let them control the narrative any longer. I pulled out my phone and texted Janet, "Change of plans. We need to talk before the barbecue. It's time." Janet's reply came almost instantly. "I'm here for you, Lucy. Whatever you need." As I pocketed my phone, a strange calm settled over me. The barbecue was no longer something to dread. It was an opportunity. Owen and Helen wanted to start their new life? Fine. But first, they'd have to face the consequences of their actions. And I would make sure every single person at that barbecue knew exactly what kind of people they really were. I sat in Janet's cozy living room, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. The familiar scent of lavender and chamomile did little to calm my frayed nerves. Janet settled into the armchair across from me, her kind eyes filled with concern. "Lucy, dear," she began gently, "tell me everything." And so I did. The words poured out of me like a dam breaking. The initial email discovery, Helen moving in, the overheard conversations, and finally, the damning emails I'd found on Helen's laptop. As I spoke, Janet's expression shifted from shock to disbelief to anger. "I can't believe Owen would do this," she whispered, shaking her head. "And Helen, your own sister. It's unconscionable." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and renewed pain at having someone else acknowledge the betrayal. "I don't know what to do, Janet. They're planning to tell me after the barbecue. I think Owen's going to ask for a divorce." Janet reached out and squeezed my hand. "Not if we have anything to say about it. Lucy, you have a choice to make. You can wait for them to control the narrative, or you can take charge." I looked up, meeting her determined gaze. "What do you mean?" "The barbecue," Janet said, a glint in her eye. "Everyone will be there. If you want to expose their affair, that would be the perfect opportunity." My heart raced at the thought. "But wouldn't that just cause a scene? Make everything worse?" Janet leaned forward. "Sometimes, dear, things need to get worse before they can get better. You've been suffering in silence for too long. It's time for Owen and Helen to face the consequences of their actions." As I considered her words, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Owen. "Where are you? Helen's asking about dinner plans." The casual tone, as if nothing was wrong, made my blood boil. I showed the message to Janet, who frowned. They're acting like nothing's amiss, she said, planning their future while pretending to care about dinner plans. It's despicable. Something inside me snapped. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger, it all crystallized into a hard, cold resolve. You're right, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's time they faced the music. But I need proof. Something concrete to show everyone. Janet nodded, a determined look on her face. We'll find it. Between the two of us, we'll uncover every bit of evidence we can. Emails, text messages, credit card statements, anything that proves their affair. As we began to plan, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. Part of me still hoped it was all a misunderstanding, just that there would be some innocent explanation, but the rational part of my brain knew better. What about George? I asked suddenly, thinking of Owen's father. Should we tell him before the barbecue? Janet shook her head. No, he needs to hear it with everyone else. George has always been proud of Owen. This will be a shock, but he needs to see the truth for himself. As the afternoon wore on, our plan took shape. We would gather as much evidence as possible over the next few days. Then, at the barbecue, when everyone was present, we would confront Owen and Helen with the truth. As I prepared to leave, Janet pulled me into a tight hug. Remember, Lucy, she whispered, you're stronger than you know, and you're not alone in this. Driving home, I felt a strange sense of calm. The decision was made. In just a few days, everything would change. My marriage, my relationship with my sister, my entire life. It would all be different after the barbecue. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Owen and Helen through the kitchen window, laughing as they prepared dinner together. The sight that would have once filled me with warmth now only steeled my resolve. Let them laugh, I thought. Let them think they have it all figured out. Because come Saturday, their little world was going to come crashing down around them, and I would be the one to light the match. The day of the barbecue arrived, and with it a sense of impending doom. I moved through the morning in a haze, setting up tables and preparing food with mechanical precision. Owen and Helen flitted about, helping with preparations, their false cheer grating on my nerves. As guests began to arrive, I felt Janet's reassuring presence at my side. Are you ready? She whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. In my pocket, I felt the weight of the USB drive containing all the evidence we'd gathered. Emails, text messages, even credit card statements showing secret hotel stays. It was a ticking time bomb, and I held the detonator. The backyard filled with laughter and chatter as family members mingled. I watched as Owen charmed our cousins with his usual easygoing manner, while Helen regaled our aunts with stories of her new job. How could they act so normal when they were about to destroy everything? George, Owen's father, approached me with a warm smile. Lucy, dear, this is a wonderful spread. You've outdone yourself. I forced a smile, guilt gnawing at me. George had always been kind to me, treating me like a daughter. How would he react when he learned the truth about his son? As the afternoon wore on, I felt my resolve wavering. Maybe I could just confront Owen and Helen privately. Maybe we could work this out without involving the entire family. But then I saw it. A fleeting touch, a secret smile exchanged between my husband and sister when they thought no one was looking. My anger flared anew, hot and righteous. I caught Janet's eye and gave a slight nod. It was time. Janet clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. Family, if I could have a moment. Lucy has something she'd like to share with us all. All eyes turned to me, and for a moment, I froze. Owen looked confused, while Helen's expression flickered with something like fear. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. I have something important to tell you all. It's not easy, but... My voice cracked, and I saw concern etched on the faces around me. That's when Owen stepped forward, placing a hand on my arm. Lucy, what's going on? Are you okay? His touch, once comforting, now felt like a brand on my skin. I jerked away, anger giving me strength. No, Owen, I'm not okay, and it's time everyone knew why. With shaking hands, I pulled out the USB drive and held it up. On this drive is evidence of a betrayal so deep, so personal, that it's torn my world apart. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Helen stepped forward, her face pale. Lucy, what are you talking about? I turned to face her, my sister, my betrayer. I'm talking about your affair with my husband, Helen. I know everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Owen's face drained of color while Helen's eyes darted frantically between us. It's not. We didn't. Owen stammered, but I cut him off. Don't lie, not anymore. I turned to address the stunned family. For months, Owen and Helen have been carrying on behind my back, planning a future together while pretending to love me. Gasps and shocked exclamations erupted. George stepped forward, his face a mask of disbelief. Owen, is this true? Owen's silence was damning. Helen burst into tears, but I felt no sympathy. With trembling hands, I connected the USB to the outdoor TV we'd set up for the barbecue. Emails and text messages flashed across the screen, laying bare every secret, every lie. As the evidence mounted, I watched the faces of my family shift from shock to anger to disgust. Owen and Helen stood frozen, exposed and humiliated. I turned to face them, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You wanted to start a new life together? Well, here's your chance, but it won't include me, and after today, I doubt it will include anyone else here either. The backyard erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, tears flowed, and in the midst of it all, I stood, feeling strangely calm. The bomb had detonated, and the fallout was just beginning. As Owen reached for me, his face pleading, I stepped back. This was far from over, but for the first time in months, I felt in control. The truth was out, and there was no going back. The backyard had become a battlefield, with family members taking sides and hurling accusations. I stood in the eye of the storm, watching as years of trust and love crumbled around me. Helen was the first to break the shocked silence that followed my revelation. Lucy, please, she sobbed, reaching for me. It's not what you think. We never meant to hurt you. I recoiled from her touch. Not what I think. I read your emails, Helen. I heard your conversations. You and Owen were planning a life together behind my back. Owen stepped forward, his face ashen. Lucy, we can explain. It just happened. We tried to fight it, but... But what? I spat, my voice rising. But you couldn't help betraying your wife? Your sister? Did you think about me at all while you were sneaking around? George, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly roared to life. Owen, how could you do this to Lucy, to our family? He turned to Helen, his eyes blazing. And you. We welcomed you into our home, treated you like family, and this is how you repay us? Helen crumpled under the weight of his words, but I felt no sympathy. My own parents had passed years ago, and the Thompsons had become my family. Helen had betrayed not just me, but all of us. Janet appeared at my side, her hand steady on my arm. Lucy, dear, perhaps we should take this inside, away from prying eyes. But I was beyond caring about propriety. No, I said firmly. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending everything is okay when it's not. They wanted to start a new life? Well, let's air out all the dirty laundry first. I turned to the gathered family members, some of whom were trying to discreetly leave. Did you know, I said, my voice carrying across the yard, that while I was caring for Aunt Martha during her chemo, these two were shacking up in hotels? Or that the business trip Owen took last month was actually a romantic getaway with my sister? Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Owen stepped toward me, his hands outstretched. Lucy, please, we can work this out. I love you. It was a mistake. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration, of feeling second best to my vibrant, carefree sister, came pouring out. A mistake? I laughed bitterly. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is burning dinner. This is a choice. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to make me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. I turned to Helen, who was openly weeping now. And you, my own sister, how could you? Was it worth it, destroying our family for what? A few cheap thrills? Helen's sobs turned to hiccups as she tried to speak. Lucy, I'm so sorry. I never meant, we never thought. That's right. I cut her off. You never thought. About anyone but yourselves. The backyard had fallen silent, all eyes on our family drama. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, even as my world crumbled around me. I want you both out of my house, I said, my voice steady. Tonight. I don't care where you go, but I never want to see either of you again. Owen's face crumpled. Lucy, please, we can fix this. Go to counseling, work things out. I shook my head, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. There's nothing to fix, Owen. You and Helen broke it beyond repair. Now you get to live with the consequences. As I turned to walk away, Helen made one last desperate plea. Lucy, wait. We're sisters. We can't end like this. I paused, looking back at her tear-stained face. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to follow me around, begging to play with her big sister. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman I no longer recognized. We ended the moment you decided my husband was more important than our sisterhood, I said softly. Goodbye, Helen. With that, I walked into the house, leaving behind the shocked silence of my family, the broken remnants of my marriage, and the sister I once loved more than anyone in the world. The door closed behind me with a final, resounding click, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months after the disastrous family barbecue, I stood in front of an easel, paintbrush in hand, staring at the canvas before me. The divorce papers had been signed, the house sold, and my old life packed away in boxes. The woman I used to be, the dutiful wife, the loving sister, was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more resilient. A knock at the door of my new apartment startled me from my reverie. I opened it to find Janet, her arms laden with groceries. I thought you could use some company, she said, her warm smile a balm to my still healing heart. As we prepared dinner together, Janet updated me on the family gossip. Owen and Helen had moved away, their relationship already strained by the weight of their betrayal. George had thrown himself into work, unable to reconcile his son's actions. And you, Lucy? Janet asked, her eyes searching my face. How are you really doing? I paused, considering her question. I'm okay, I said slowly. Some days are harder than others, but I'm finding my way. Janet nodded, reaching out to squeeze my hand. I'm so proud of you, dear. You've shown incredible strength. After dinner, I showed Janet my latest paintings. Her eyes widened as she took in the vibrant colors and bold strokes. Lucy, these are amazing. I had no idea you were so talented. I felt a flush of pride. Neither did I, really. It's something I loved as a girl, but I gave it up when I married Owen. Now it feels like I'm rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten. As Janet prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. George asked about you, she said softly. The business connection with your grandfather. He wants to know if you'd be interested in taking a more active role. I blinked, surprised. Really? Even after everything that happened? Janet nodded. George respects you, Lucy. He sees your strength, your integrity, and I think he feels guilty about Owen's actions. I promised to think about it, and as I closed the door behind Janet, I felt a surge of possibility. My life, which had seemed so bleak just months ago, was opening up in ways I never expected. The next morning, I woke early, feeling restless. On impulse, I grabbed my car keys and drove to the beach where Owen and I had our first date. As I walked along the shore, the cool sand beneath my feet, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain of betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer consumed me. I thought of Helen, my little sister who had once been my best friend. Part of me still loved her, still missed her, but I knew that forgiveness, if it ever came, was a long way off. As the sun rose over the water, painting the sky in brilliant pinks and oranges, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. George, it's Lucy. I've been thinking about your offer. An hour later, I stood in front of my easel again, but this time with a new perspective. The canvas, once blank and intimidating, now seemed full of possibility. With bold strokes, I began to paint, letting my emotions flow through the brush. The painting that emerged was a self-portrait, but not of the woman I used to be. This Lucy was strong, her eyes clear and determined, her posture straight and proud. She stood alone, but not lonely, surrounded by vibrant colors that spoke of hope and new beginnings. As I stepped back to survey my work, I realized that this painting was more than just art. It was a declaration of independence, a promise to myself. The road ahead might be uncertain, but I was ready to face it head-on. Owen and Helen had betrayed me, yes. They had shattered the life I thought I wanted, but in doing so they had inadvertently set me free to rediscover my passions, to forge new connections, to build a life that was truly my own. I picked up my phone once more, this time to call Janet. I've made a decision, I told her, my voice steady and sure. I'm going to take George up on his offer, and I'm going to have an art show. Will you help me plan it? Janet's enthusiastic response brought a smile to my face. As I hung up, I turned back to my self-portrait. The woman on the canvas looked back at me, her eyes full of promise. Well, Lucy, I said aloud, looks like we're just getting started. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, genuinely excited for what the future might hold. The teacup trembled in my hand as I set it down, the delicate china clinking against the saucer. Across the immaculate living room, my mother-in-law, Brenda, peered at me over her reading glasses, her lips pursed in that familiar look of disapproval. "Louisa, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I couldn't help but notice you've been spending an awful lot of time at that quaint little bookstore lately. Shouldn't you be focusing on more substantial pursuits?" I forced a smile, my fingers twisting the napkin in my lap. "I enjoy my work at Margaret's shop, Brenda. It's fulfilling, and I'm good at it." Brenda's eyebrow arched. "Fulfilling? My dear, stocking shelves and ringing up romance novels is hardly what I'd call an intellectual endeavor. Surely you could find something more befitting your position as Kenneth's wife." The familiar sting of her words made my cheeks burn. I opened my mouth to respond, but the sound of the front door opening interrupted us. "Hello? Anyone home?" Kenneth's voice called out. "In here, darling," Brenda chirped, her demeanor instantly shifting. "Your lovely wife and I were just having a little chat." Kenneth appeared in the doorway, his professorial tweed jacket slightly rumpled. He smiled warmly at me before bending to kiss his mother's cheek. "I hope you two are getting along," he said, oblivious to the tension in the room. "Oh, splendidly," Brenda replied. "I was just encouraging Louisa to consider broadening her horizons, perhaps auditing one of your classes at the university." I bit my lip, willing myself not to react. Kenneth's face lit up at the suggestion. "That's a wonderful idea, Mother. What do you think, Lou? You've always said you wished you'd gone to college." Trapped, I nodded weakly. "I'll think about it." Brenda's triumphant smile made my stomach churn. "Excellent. Now, Kenneth, tell me about your latest research. I'm dying to hear about it." As they launched into an animated discussion peppered with academic jargon, I quietly excused myself and retreated to the kitchen. Leaning against the cool granite countertop, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. The sound of footsteps made me straighten up. Kenneth appeared, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay, Lou? You seemed a bit off in there." I plastered on a smile. "Just a headache. I'll be fine." He frowned, unconvinced. "Are you sure? I know Mother can be a bit intense sometimes." "It's nothing," I insisted, hating the lie even as it left my lips. "Really, Ken, go back to your mom. I'm sure she has plenty more to say about your work." Kenneth hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but if you need anything—" "I know," I said softly. He gave me a quick peck on the cheek before heading back to the living room. Alone again, I sagged against the counter. The weight of Brenda's constant criticism, the feeling of inadequacy that gnawed at me daily, it was becoming unbearable. But how could I explain that to Kenneth? He adored his mother, saw her as the brilliant, accomplished woman she presented to the world. He'd never understand the cruel barbs she reserved for me when he wasn't around. My phone buzzed, a welcome distraction. A text from my sister, Emma. "Guess what? I got tickets to Brenda's lecture series at the library next month." Can you believe it? I'm so excited. I stared at the message, my heart sinking. Even my own sister was under Brenda's spell. How could I tell Emma that her idol, the woman whose podcast she religiously listened to, was the same person who made my life miserable? The voices from the living room drifted into the kitchen, Brenda's cultured tones dominating the conversation. I closed my eyes, feeling more alone than ever. Something had to change. I couldn't go on like this, pretending everything was fine while slowly crumbling inside. But what could I do? The thought of confronting Brenda, of potentially driving a wedge between Kenneth and his mother, terrified me. And yet, as I listened to her holding court in the next room, a small spark of defiance ignited in my chest. I was done being invisible, done being the perfect, compliant daughter-in-law. Somehow, some way, I would find the strength to stand up to Brenda and reclaim my own voice in the process. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. Fumbling in the dark, I answered groggily, "Hello? Lou. Oh my God, you'll never believe it." Emma's excited voice pierced through my sleepy haze. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. "Em, what's going on?" I squinted at the clock. 6:30 in the morning. I know, but I couldn't wait. I just got engaged." My drowsiness evaporated instantly. "What? Emma, that's wonderful. Congratulations." As Emma gushed about the proposal, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. My little sister getting married. It was a moment of pure joy in what had been a trying few weeks. Lou? Emma's voice turned hesitant. There's something else I wanted to ask you. Of course, anything. Well, I was hoping you could ask Brenda to be a guest speaker at the wedding reception. You know how much her work means to me, and it would make the day so special. My stomach dropped. Oh, Em, I don't know. Please, Lou. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're so close to her. I'm sure if you asked, she'd say yes. Close to her. If only Emma knew the truth. But how could I burst her bubble? How could I tell her that her idol was the same woman who made my life a living hell? I'll see what I can do, I heard myself say. After hanging up, I buried my face in my hands. How had I gotten myself into this mess? Later that morning, I found myself at Margaret's bookstore, desperately seeking advice from my former boss and confidant. Oh, honey, Margaret said, her kind eyes filled with concern. You've got yourself in quite a pickle, haven't you? I nodded miserably. I don't know what to do, Margaret. I can't bear the thought of Brenda ruining Emma's wedding with her condescension, but I also can't bring myself to tell Emma the truth about her. Margaret pursed her lips thoughtfully. Have you considered talking to Kenneth about this? Maybe if he understood the situation. I shook my head vehemently. You don't understand. Kenneth worships the ground his mother walks on. He'd never believe me. Then perhaps it's time to stand up to Brenda yourself, Margaret suggested gently. The very thought made my palms sweat. I don't know if I can. Margaret reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. Louisa, you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Don't let Brenda's words define you. As I left the bookstore, Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Could I really stand up to Brenda? The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. That evening, I found myself alone with Brenda in her study. Kenneth was working late, and I knew this might be my only chance. Brenda, I began, my voice shakier than I'd like, I have a favor to ask. She looked up from her book, one eyebrow raised. Oh? And what might that be? I took a deep breath. My sister Emma is getting married, and she'd love for you to be a guest speaker at the reception. Your work means a lot to her. Brenda's lips curled into a smirk. Your sister, the librarian, correct? How quaint. I felt my cheeks flush with anger. Emma is brilliant and passionate about literature. She admires you greatly. I'm sure she does, Brenda said dismissively. But really, Louisa, a small-town wedding? It's hardly the appropriate venue for someone of my stature. I clenched my fists, willing myself to stay calm. It would mean the world to Emma, and to me. Brenda's eyes narrowed. And why should that matter? You may have fooled my son with your simple charms, but let's be clear, you and your family will never be on our level. Her words hit me like a physical blow, but instead of shrinking away, I felt something snap inside me. Our level? I said, my voice low and dangerous. And what level is that, Brenda? The level where you tear others down to make yourself feel superior? Brenda's face contorted with rage. How dare you speak to me like that? I'll have you know. No, I cut her off, surprising myself with my boldness. I've had enough. You may not respect me or my family, but I won't let you ruin my sister's happiness. As I stormed out of the study, leaving a sputtering Brenda behind, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. I'd finally stood up to her, but at what cost? And how on earth was I going to explain this to Emma? The morning after my confrontation with Brenda, I woke to find Kenneth already gone. A hastily scribbled note on his pillow read, "Emergency department meeting. We need to talk later." My stomach churned with dread. I barely had time to process this when my phone buzzed. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Lou, have you asked Brenda yet? I'm dying to know what she said. I closed my eyes, steeling myself. About that. Oh no, Emma's voice fell. She said no, didn't she? The disappointment in her voice broke my heart. Emma, I'm so sorry. I tried, but... It's okay, she interrupted, her tone falsely bright. I get it, she's probably super busy. Thanks for trying, sis. As we hung up, I felt a surge of anger. How dare Brenda crush my sister's dreams? And how could I let her get away with it? Determined to set things right, I marched over to Brenda's house. I found her in the garden, pruning her prized roses. Louisa, she said coolly, not looking up. I thought I made myself clear yesterday. Crystal clear, I replied, my voice steady. That's why I'm here. You're going to reconsider. Brenda laughed, a harsh sound. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll tell Kenneth everything. Every insult, every cruel remark you've made behind his back. She finally looked at me, her eyes narrowing. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I challenged, my heart pounding. For a moment, we stared each other down. Then Brenda's lips curled into a sneer. Go ahead. Who do you think he'll believe? His accomplished mother, or his quaint little wife? Her words stung, but I refused to back down. Are you willing to take that risk? A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Fine, she spat. I'll speak at your sister's little gathering, but don't think this changes anything between us. I nodded, turning to leave. As I reached the gate, Brenda called out. Oh, and Louisa? You might want to have a chat with your husband. He seemed quite perturbed this morning. My blood ran cold. What had she told Kenneth? I rushed home, my mind racing. As I burst through the front door, I found Kenneth waiting for me, his face grim. Where have you been? He demanded. I went to see your mother, I admitted. Kenneth's expression darkened. So it's true then? You've been harassing her? What? No, Kenneth, that's not. She told me everything, Lou. How you've been pressuring her, making unreasonable demands. She's upset, and frankly, so am I. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Kenneth, please, you don't understand. Your mother, she's not who you think she is. And what's that supposed to mean? He snapped. Tears welled in my eyes. She's cruel, Kenneth, the things she says to me when you're not around. Stop it, he cut me off. I won't listen to you badmouth my mother. She's done nothing but try to help you, to elevate you, and this is how you repay her? Elevate me? I echoed, incredulous. By constantly reminding me that I'm not good enough, that I don't belong in this family? Kenneth's face softened slightly. Lou, I'm sure you're misinterpreting things. Mother can be direct sometimes, but she means well. I shook my head, realizing with a sinking heart that he would never see the truth. You're right, I said quietly. I must be misinterpreting things. As Kenneth relaxed, visibly relieved, I made a decision. If he wouldn't believe my words, I'd have to show him the truth another way. I think I'll go lie down, I murmured. I'm not feeling well. Kenneth nodded, already turning away. Good idea. And Lou? Please try to make things right with Mother. In our bedroom, I sank onto the bed, my mind whirling. I'd tried playing nice. I'd tried standing up to Brenda directly. Nothing had worked. There was only one option left. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone, pulling up the voice recorder app. If this was the only way to expose Brenda's true nature, to protect myself and my family, then so be it. As I hit the record button, a mix of fear and determination coursed through me. This was it, the point of no return. The days following my decision to record Brenda's behavior were a blur of anxiety and guilt. Every interaction with her became a potential opportunity, my phone always at the ready in my pocket. But as Emma's wedding drew closer, Brenda seemed to sense my newfound resolve and kept her distance. Then, 3 weeks before the big day, everything imploded. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Kenneth burst through the door, his face ashen. Lou, we need to talk, now. My heart plummeted. What's wrong? He slumped into a chair, running a hand through his hair. It's Mother. She's refusing to speak at Emma's wedding. What? I gasped, genuinely shocked. But she agreed, she told me. Well, she's changed her mind, Kenneth interrupted. She says she can't possibly lower herself to address such an unsophisticated audience. The words hit me like a slap. I gripped the counter, steadying myself. Did she actually say that? Kenneth nodded miserably. Lou, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she felt this way about your family. I tried to talk her out of it, but she won't budge. In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the fear, all the hesitation I'd felt about exposing Brenda evaporated. I have to tell Emma, I said, reaching for my phone. Wait, Kenneth caught my wrist. Maybe we can find another speaker. Someone from the university, perhaps? I stared at him, incredulous. Are you serious, Kenneth? Your mother just insulted my entire family and you want to cover for her? He flinched. I'm not covering for her. I don't want to ruin Emma's big day. Emma's day is already ruined, I shouted, surprising us both with my vehemence. Don't you see? Brenda has been doing this for years, tearing me down, making me feel worthless, and now she's doing it to my sister. Kenneth's face crumpled. Lou, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? the fight drained out of me. Because you never wanted to see it, I said softly. Because she's your mother and you love her. We sat in heavy silence for a moment. Then Kenneth spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do we do now? I took a deep breath. I need to tell Emma the truth. All of it. He nodded slowly. Okay. And then? And then, I said, a newfound determination stealing my voice. I'm done letting Brenda control our lives. It's time she faced the consequences of her actions. As I dialed Emma's number, my hand shaking, I knew there was no going back. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest of my life. Emma's initial disbelief gave way to hurt, then anger. Not at me, but at Brenda, and at herself for idolizing someone so cruel. I'm so sorry, Em, I said, tears streaming down my face. I should have told you sooner. No, Lou, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry I didn't see what you were going through. But what do we do now? The wedding's in 3 weeks, and we don't have a speaker. I hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. Actually, I have an idea about that. Do you remember Margaret, my old boss from the bookstore? As I outlined my plan to Emma, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life, standing up not just for myself, but for my family. After hanging up, I turned to Kenneth, who had been listening silently. I need you to understand something, I said, meeting his eyes. What I'm about to do, it's going to change everything. Are you with me? He reached out, taking my hand in his. I'm with you, Lou, whatever it takes. In that moment, I knew. The time for secrets, for quiet suffering was over. Brenda had no idea what was coming her way, but I did, and I was ready. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I scrolled through the recordings I'd managed to capture over the past few weeks. Brenda's voice, dripping with condescension, filled the room. Really, Louisa, I don't know why you insist on embarrassing yourself like this. Not a book club? How quaint. I winced, remembering the sting of her words, but now they fueled my resolve. As I dressed for the day, Kenneth stirred. Lou, what are you doing up so early? I took a deep breath. I'm going to see your mother. He sat up, alarm clear on his face. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's necessary, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to give her one last chance to make things right. Kenneth nodded slowly. Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, this is something I need to do alone. The drive to Brenda's house felt interminable. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as I rehearsed what I would say. As I pulled into her driveway, I saw her peering out the window, her lips pursed in disapproval. Louisa, she greeted me coldly as I entered. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? I steeled myself. Brenda, we need to talk about Emma's wedding. She waved a dismissive hand. I thought I made myself clear. I have no interest in addressing such a provincial gathering. That's not good enough, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. You agreed to speak. Emma is devastated. Brenda's eyes narrowed. And why should I care about the feelings of your simpleton sister? The words hit me like a physical blow. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, because I have proof of how you really are. Her face paled. What are you talking about? With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. Brenda's voice, cruel and mocking, filled the room. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. You little snake, she hissed. How dare you record me without my knowledge? How dare you treat me and my family like this? I shot back. For years I've endured your insults, your constant belittling. No more. Brenda's composure cracked. What do you want from me? I want you to apologize to Emma. I want you to speak at her wedding as promised, and I want you to start treating me with respect. She laughed bitterly. Or what? You'll show those recordings to Kenneth? He'll never believe you over me. Her words hit a nerve, but I stood my ground. Are you willing to take that risk? Because I am. For a moment we stared each other down. Then, to my shock, Brenda's shoulders slumped. Fine, she spat. I'll do it, but this changes nothing between us. As I left her house, my heart pounding, I felt a mix of triumph and dread. I'd won this battle, but at what cost? Back home, I found Kenneth waiting anxiously. How did it go? I sank onto the couch beside him. She agreed to speak at the wedding. But what? He pressed. I took a deep breath. Kenneth, there's something I need to show you. As I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the play button, I knew I was about to change our lives forever. The recordings would expose Brenda's true nature, but they would also shatter Kenneth's image of his mother. Was I ready for the fallout? I looked into my husband's concerned eyes and made my decision. With a trembling finger, I pressed play. The recordings played, filling our living room with Brenda's caustic voice. Kenneth's face paled, his eyes widening with each venomous word. I watched, heart pounding, as the truth I'd lived with for years finally came to light. "I can't believe this," Kenneth whispered, his voice cracking. "All this time, how could she?" I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, standing abruptly. "I need to talk to her. Now." "Kenneth, wait." But he was already grabbing his keys, storming out the door. Panic seized me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I fumbled for my phone, dialing Emma's number as I raced to my car. It's happening. Kenneth knows everything. He's on his way to confront Brenda." "Oh, God, Lou, what can I do? Meet me at Brenda's. Hurry." The drive was a blur. I arrived just as Kenneth was pounding on Brenda's front door. Emma pulled up seconds later, breathless and wide-eyed. Brenda opened the door, her face a mask of confusion. "Kenneth? Louisa, what's the meaning of this?" Kenneth pushed past her into the house. We followed, the air thick with tension. "How could you, Mother?" Kenneth's voice was low, dangerous. "All these years, treating Louisa like this?" Brenda's eyes darted between us, realization dawning. "She showed you those ridiculous recordings? Kenneth, surely you can't believe. I heard it myself," he roared. "Your voice, your words, how you've belittled and insulted my wife, my family." Brenda's composure cracked. "Now, darling, you have to understand, I only wanted what was best for you. Louisa, she's just not our kind." The room fell silent. I felt Emma stiffen beside me, her hand finding mine and squeezing tight. Kenneth's voice was ice. "Our kind? And what kind is that, Mother? Cruel? Elitist?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" I found myself speaking, my voice steadier than I felt. "All these years you've made me feel small, worthless. But I'm not the problem here, Brenda. You are." Brenda's face contorted with rage. "How dare you? After everything I've done for this family." "Family?" Emma interjected, her quiet voice cutting through the chaos. "Is that what you call this? Tearing people down, making them feel inferior?" Brenda turned on her, sneering. "Oh, the little librarian speaks. Tell me, dear, how many advanced degrees do you have? How many published works?" "That's enough," Kenneth bellowed. The room fell silent once more. "Mother, I want you out of our lives. All of our lives." Brenda paled. "Kenneth, you can't mean that. I'm your mother." "Not anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "Not after this." As the weight of Kenneth's words sank in, Brenda's facade finally crumbled. She collapsed into a chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment I felt a flicker of pity. Then I remembered all the pain, all the sleepless nights, all the times I doubted myself because of this woman. "It's over, Brenda," I said softly. "You've lost." We turned to leave, but Brenda's voice, small and broken, stopped us. "Please, don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll speak at the wedding. I'll apologize. Just please." I looked at Kenneth, then at Emma. Their faces mirrored my own conflicted emotions. "It's not that simple," I finally said. "Words aren't enough anymore." As we walked out, leaving Brenda alone in her grand, empty house, I felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. We'd won, but at what cost? Outside, Kenneth pulled me into a fierce embrace. "I'm so sorry, Lou. I should have seen it sooner." I held him tight, feeling the tears I'd held back for so long finally spill over. Emma joined our hug, her presence a balm to my raw emotions. As we stood there, united in the aftermath of the storm, I realized this wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, for all of us. But what that beginning would look like and whether Brenda could ever be a part of it remained to be seen. The days following our confrontation with Brenda passed in a haze of emotional turmoil. Kenneth was a shell of himself, alternating between bouts of anger and periods of deep, brooding silence. Emma threw herself into wedding preparations with a frenetic energy that worried me. And I felt hollowed out, unsure if I'd done the right thing. A week before Emma's wedding, the other shoe finally dropped. I was at Margaret's bookstore, seeking solace in the familiar smell of old books and her comforting presence, when my phone buzzed. It was Kenneth. "Lou, you need to come home, now." His tone sent chills down my spine. I rushed back, my mind racing with possibilities. Had Brenda done something? Was Kenneth having second thoughts about cutting her off? I burst through our front door to find Kenneth pacing, his face ashen. "It's all over the university," he said without preamble. "Someone leaked the recordings." The world tilted beneath my feet. "What? How?" He shook his head, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know, but everyone's heard them. The dean called me in this morning. They're considering revoking Mother's Emeritus status." I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. "Oh, God. Kenneth, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." His eyes met mine, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. "Didn't you, though? Isn't this exactly what you wanted, to see her fall?" His words stung like a slap. "That's not fair," I whispered. "I just wanted her to stop hurting us." Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was Emma, her voice tight with panic. "Lou, have you seen the news? Brenda's all over social media. They're calling her the elitist professor. It's bad." My heart sank further. "Em, I'm so sorry. Your wedding." "Forget the wedding," she snapped. "Lou, what have we done?" As I hung up, feeling the weight of guilt crushing me, Kenneth's phone chimed. His face paled as he read the message. "It's Mother," he said quietly. She's in the hospital, apparent suicide attempt." The world stopped. In that moment, I saw with terrifying clarity the consequences of my actions. Yes, Brenda had been cruel, had made my life miserable. But this was never what I'd intended. "We have to go to her," I heard myself say. Kenneth nodded, his eyes haunted. As we drove to the hospital in tense silence, I couldn't help but wonder, had I become the very thing I despised? In my quest for justice, had I lost my own humanity? At the hospital, we found Brenda in a private room, looking small and frail in the stark white bed. Her eyes, usually so sharp and judgmental, were dull and unfocused. "Kenneth," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Louisa," I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Brenda, No," she interrupted, her hand trembling as she raised it. "Let me speak. I've done terrible things, to both of you. To Emma, I see that now." Tears welled in her eyes, a sight I'd never thought I'd witness. "I was so afraid," she continued. "Afraid of losing my status, my influence, afraid of not being needed. I lashed out at you, Louisa, because you represented everything I feared, and in doing so I nearly lost the only things that truly matter." She reached for Kenneth's hand, then mine. To my shock, I found myself taking it. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked, her voice breaking. I looked at Kenneth, saw the conflict in his eyes that I felt in my own heart. Could we forgive her? After everything she'd done, everything that had happened, as we stood there, the future hanging in the balance, I realized we were at a crossroads. Our next words, our next actions would determine not just Brenda's fate, but our own. Could we find a way forward, or was the damage too great to repair? The weight of that decision pressed down on me, leaving me breathless. Whatever came next, I knew our lives would never be the same. The months following Brenda's hospitalization were a whirlwind of change and introspection. As I stood in our nursery, gently rocking our newborn daughter, I marveled at how much our lives had transformed. Brenda's fall from grace had been swift and merciless. The university revoked her emeritus status, citing ethical violations. Her colleagues distanced themselves, her speaking engagements dried up. The woman who had once loomed so large in our lives suddenly seemed small and vulnerable. Kenneth struggled with the aftermath, torn between anger at his mother's past behavior and concern for her well-being. I watched him grapple with these conflicting emotions, my heart aching for the pain he endured. Emma's wedding had been a bittersweet affair. The shadow of recent events hung over the celebration. But there was also a sense of relief, of burdens lifted. As I watched my sister exchange vows, I felt a glimmer of hope for our family's future. Now, as I held my daughter, I found myself at a crossroads. The anger and resentment I'd harbored for so long had left me feeling hollow. The victory I'd thought I wanted tasted like ashes in my mouth. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. Kenneth entered, his eyes tired but warm. "How are my girls doing?" he asked softly. I smiled, passing our daughter to him. "We're good, just thinking." He cradled her gently, a look of wonder on his face. "About?" I took a deep breath. "About your mother. About everything." Kenneth's expression grew serious. "Lou, we need to talk about that. I've been thinking, maybe it's time we reached out to her." My heart raced. "Are you sure? After everything that's happened?" He nodded slowly. "I'm not saying we forget or excuse what she did, but seeing her like this, alone and broken, it's made me realize that holding on to anger isn't helping any of us. I thought of Brenda, once so proud and imposing, now living in a small apartment, cut off from her former life. The image stirred something unexpected within me, compassion. "You're right," I said, surprising myself. "But Kenneth, if we do this, we need to set clear boundaries, for our daughter's sake, if nothing else." He smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "Of course, we'll do it together on our terms." As we stood there, our daughter nestled between us, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. The next day, we visited Brenda. She opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of us and the baby carrier in my hand. "Kenneth? Louisa? Is that—" I nodded, stepping inside. "Your granddaughter. We thought it was time you met her." Tears welled in Brenda's eyes as she gazed at the sleeping infant. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "I never thought. I didn't dare hope." "Mother," Kenneth said gently, "we want to try and move forward. It won't be easy, and there's a lot to work through, but if you're willing to try, so are we." Brenda's hand trembled as she reached out, hesitating before touching her granddaughter's tiny fingers. "I don't deserve this chance," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "but I promise you, I'll spend every day trying to earn it." As I watched Brenda with our daughter, I felt the last vestiges of my anger melt away. In its place was a cautious optimism, a hope for a future where the cycles of hurt and resentment could be broken. Later that night, as Kenneth and I lay in bed, our daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the anger, the desire for revenge, it had all led to this moment of healing and new beginnings. "What are you thinking?" Kenneth asked, his hand finding mine in the darkness. I squeezed his fingers, a smile playing on my lips. "I'm thinking about second chances, about the power of forgiveness, not just for others, but for ourselves." As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead would have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. With love, understanding, and the wisdom born from our struggles, we would build a future where our daughter could thrive, free from the invisible scars that had haunted us for so long. In the end, I realized the greatest revenge wasn't in tearing others down, but in rising above the pain and choosing a path of compassion and growth. And in that choice, I found a victory sweeter than I could have ever imagined. The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my sleep. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the bright screen. 3:17 a.m. I held my breath, straining to hear any movement downstairs. Silence, then a muffled curse. "Elliot," I whispered, shaking my son's shoulder. "Wake up, sweetie. We need to be very quiet." His eyes fluttered open, confusion quickly replaced by fear as he registered my urgency. I pressed a finger to my lips and guided him to the closet, tucking him behind a row of hanging clothes. "Stay here. Don't make a sound. I'll be right back." I crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the carpet. As I neared the stairs, a familiar voice drifted up from the living room. "Where's the damn thing?" "Sean, my ex-husband and the last person I wanted in my house at this hour. Or any hour, for that matter." I descended the stairs slowly, my hand trailing the wall for support. The living room was a mess, cushions strewn about and drawers pulled open. Sean stood in the center, swaying slightly as he rifled through a stack of papers on the coffee table. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, flicking on the lights. Sean spun around, his bloodshot eyes wide with surprise. "Olivia, I needed to get something." "At 3 a.m? You broke in." He waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be so dramatic. I still have a key." "Which I told you to return months ago." You're trespassing, Sean." He stumbled toward me, and I caught a whiff of alcohol. "Come on, Liv. I just need some cash for Elliot's birthday present." I laughed bitterly. "Elliot's birthday was 2 months ago. You didn't even call." Sean's face darkened. "I've been busy. Things have been complicated." "Complicated? Is that what you call gambling away your paycheck and shacking up with that waitress from Denny's?" His eyes narrowed. "How did small town, Sean? People talk." I crossed my arms, steeling myself. "I want you out of this house. Now." He took another step closer, his voice low and threatening. "Not until I get what I came for." "There's nothing here for you," I spat. "Leave or I'm calling the cops." Sean's hand shot out, gripping my arm painfully. "You wouldn't dare." A small voice came from the top of the stairs. "Mom?" We both turned to see Elliot, his eyes wide with fear. Sean's grip loosened. "Hey, buddy," he said, his tone suddenly jovial. "Dad's just visiting. Go back to bed." I wrenched my arm free. "Elliot, go to your room and lock the door. Now." Sean's face contorted with anger. "Don't you dare turn my son against me." "You've done that all on your own," I shot back. He lunged forward, but his drunken state made him clumsy. I sidestepped easily, and he stumbled into the coffee table, sending it crashing to the floor. "That's it," I said, grabbing my phone. "I'm calling the police." Sean struggled to his feet, panic replacing anger. "Wait, Liv, please. I'm sorry, okay? I'll go." I paused, my finger hovering over the call button. "This is the last time, Sean. If you ever come here again, I'll file for a restraining order." He nodded, backing towards the door. "I get it. I'll make things right." As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. Elliot's tentative footsteps on the stairs made me look up. "Is Dad gone?" he asked, his voice small. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, sweetie, he's gone. Everything's okay now." But as I held my son close, I knew nothing was okay. Sean's intrusion had shattered more than just my sense of security. It had confirmed my worst fears about how far he'd fallen and how much danger he might pose to our son. I needed a plan, and I knew just who to call for help. I paced the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the endless ringing. "Come on, Isabel," I muttered. "Pick up." Finally, a click. "Hello." Isabel's voice was groggy with sleep. "Isabel, it's Olivia. I'm sorry to call so early, but it's about Sean." There was a sharp intake of breath. "What's he done now?" I recounted the night's events, my voice shaking. As I spoke, I could hear Isabel's breathing quicken. "That boy," she said when I finished. "I thought I'd raised him better than this." "It's not your fault, Isabel. Sean makes his own choices." She sighed heavily. "Maybe, but I can't help feeling responsible. What can I do to help?" I hesitated. I hate to ask, but I need to protect Elliot. Sean's spiraling, and I'm afraid he'll do something drastic. "Say no more," Isabel said firmly. "I'm on the next flight out." Relief washed over me. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." After we hung up, I found Elliot in the living room, half-heartedly picking up the mess Sean had left behind. "Hey, sweetie," I said, kneeling beside him. "How are you feeling?" He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Is Dad coming back?" My heart clenched. "I don't think so, honey. Not for a while." Elliot nodded, his little face scrunched in concentration. "Good," he said finally. "He scared you." I pulled him into a hug, blinking back tears. "I'm okay, Elliot. We're going to be just fine." The next day passed in a blur of work and worry. I jumped at every noise, half expecting Sean to come crashing through the door again. By the time I picked up Elliot from school, my nerves were frayed. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. A woman sat in the driver's seat, her gaze fixed on our house. "Elliot, go inside and start your homework," I said, keeping my voice light. "I'll be right there." I approached the car, my heart pounding. The woman rolled down her window, revealing a face I'd only seen in Facebook photos. "Rachel," I said, crossing my arms. "What are you doing here?" Sean's girlfriend had the decency to look uncomfortable. I needed to talk to you about Sean." "There's nothing to talk about." I snapped. "He broke into my house last night. He's lucky I didn't press charges." Rachel's eyes widened. "He what? Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "What did you think would happen when you got involved with an addict?" She flinched. "I thought I could help him, but things have gotten complicated." A chill ran down my spine. "Complicated how?" Rachel glanced around nervously. "Sean's in trouble. Big trouble. He owes some dangerous people a lot of money." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, turning to leave. "Wait," Rachel called. "They know about Elliot. They've been asking questions." I froze, fear gripping my heart. "What kind of questions?" "About his school, his routine. I think they might try to use him to get to Sean." The world tilted beneath my feet. I gripped the car door to steady myself. "Why are you telling me this?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Because I realized I'm in over my head, and because no child should suffer for their parents' mistakes." I nodded, my mind racing. "Thank you for the warning. Now I need you to leave and never come near my family again." As Rachel drove away, I hurried inside, my hands shaking as I locked the door. Elliot looked up from his homework, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mom, what's wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetie, just a little tired." I glanced at the clock. "Grandma Isabel should be here soon. Why don't we make her favorite cookies to welcome her?" As Elliot cheered and ran to the kitchen, I leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. Isabel couldn't get here fast enough. We needed a plan, and we needed it now. The stakes had just gotten much, much higher. The moment Isabel walked through the door, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Her familiar perfume enveloped me as we hugged, and for a brief moment, I felt like a child again, safe and protected. "Oh, Olivia," she said, pulling back to look at me. "You look exhausted, dear." I managed a weak smile. "It's been a rough couple of days." Elliot barreled into the room, throwing himself at his grandmother. "Grandma Izzy?" Isabel's face lit up as she scooped him into her arms. "There's my little man. My, you've grown." As Elliot chattered away about school and his latest art projects, I caught Isabel's eye. She nodded, understanding the unspoken message. We needed to talk. Once Elliot was settled in bed, Isabel and I sat at the kitchen table, mugs of tea steaming between us. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice gentle but firm. I recounted Sean's break-in and Rachel's warning, my hands shaking as I spoke. Isabel listened intently, her brow furrowing deeper with each word. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We'll fix this, Olivia. I have an idea, but it's not going to be easy." "At this point, I'm willing to try anything," I said. Isabel took a deep breath. "I'm going to offer Sean money. A lot of money, enough to pay off his debts and then some." I blinked in surprise. "Isabel, that's incredibly generous, but—" She held up a hand. "There's a catch. In exchange, he'll sign away his parental rights, completely and irrevocably." The weight of her words hung in the air between us. "Do you think he'd actually do it?" I whispered. "For the right amount, yes, I do." Isabel's voice was heavy with sadness. "My son has proven time and time again that money means more to him than family." As much as it pained me to admit it, I knew she was right. "Okay," I said, "let's do it." The next morning, we put our plan into action. Isabel made the call while I paced nervously in the living room, Elliot safely at school. "He agreed to meet," Isabel said as she hung up. "This afternoon at the diner on Main Street." My stomach churned. I should be there. Isabel shook her head. "No, dear, it's better if I handle this alone. Sean's more likely to let his guard down with me." As much as I hated it, I knew she was right. The hours crawled by. I jumped at every sound, half expecting Sean to burst through the door at any moment. When my phone finally rang, I nearly dropped it in my haste to answer. "It's done," Isabel said, her voice tight. "He signed the papers." Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by a wave of guilt. How did he seem? There was a long pause, desperate, relieved, and completely unrepentant. Isabel's voice cracked. "He didn't even ask about Elliot." My heart ached for her. "I'm so sorry, Isabel. You shouldn't have had to do that." "No, I'm glad I did," she said firmly. "It needed to be done, for Elliot's sake." As we said our goodbyes, a noise outside caught my attention. I peered through the window, my blood running cold at what I saw. A black SUV was parked across the street, 2 men in dark suits standing beside it. As I watched, one of them pointed at our house. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The debt isn't settled. We know where the kid is." Panic gripped me. I ran to the door, fumbling with the locks, but as I yanked it open, ready to race to the school, I came face to face with Sean. His eyes were wild, his clothes disheveled. "Olivia," he gasped, "you have to help me. They're going to kill me." Behind him, I saw the men from the SUV approaching, their hands reaching inside their jackets. My mind raced. In that split second, I had to decide, slam the door on Sean and call the police, or let him in and potentially endanger Elliot. The choice I made would change everything. The weeks following Sean's desperate appearance at my doorstep were a blur of fear, exhaustion, and constant vigilance. I'd slammed the door in his face that day, my maternal instincts overriding any lingering sympathy. The men in suits had dragged him away, his pleas fading as I called the police with shaking hands. Now, as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pile of bills before me, I felt the weight of our new reality pressing down. The extra security measures, new locks, an alarm system, even self-defense classes had drained my savings. But I'd do it all again in a heartbeat to keep Elliot safe. A gentle ping from my laptop pulled me from my thoughts. Isabel's smiling face appeared on the screen, a welcome sight after so many sleepless nights. "Olivia, dear, how are you holding up?" I managed a weak smile. "We're managing, Isabel. How about you?" Her eyes crinkled with concern. "Oh, don't you worry about me. I'm more interested in how my grandson is doing." As if on cue, Elliot bounded into the room, his face lighting up at the sight of his grandmother. "Grandma Izzy!" For a few precious minutes I watched them chat, Elliot's laughter filling the room as Isabel regaled him with stories of her garden. It was moments like these that made all the struggle worthwhile. Once Elliot had run off to play, Isabel's expression turned serious. "Any word from Sean?" I shook my head. "Nothing since that day. The police say he's in the wind." Isabel sighed heavily. "I should have known the money wouldn't be enough. Olivia, I've been thinking that perhaps it's time for a fresh start, for all of us." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" "I have a summer house up in Maine. It's secluded, peaceful. Maybe you and Elliot could use a change of scenery. And, well, I wouldn't mind the company either." The offer hung in the air, tempting and terrifying all at once. Leave everything behind? Start over? I don't know, Isabel. My job, Elliot's school. She waved a hand dismissively. "Details, my dear. All solvable problems. Just promise me you'll think about it?" I nodded, my mind already racing with possibilities. After we said our goodbyes, I sat in silence, weighing our options. The idea of escape was intoxicating, but could I really uproot Elliot's life? A sharp knock at the door shattered my reverie. My heart leapt into my throat as I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. Rachel stood on my porch, looking haggard and afraid. Against my better judgment, I opened the door a crack. "What are you doing here?" "Please," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "I need your help. Sean's in trouble. Real trouble this time." I started to close the door, but her next words froze me in place. "They're going to kill him, Olivia. And then they're coming for Elliot." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Rachel's voice trembled. "The men Sean owes, they're not just loan sharks, they're human traffickers, and they think Elliot could fetch a good price." The world tilted beneath my feet. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, bile rising in my throat. "Why should I believe you?" I managed to choke out. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Because I've seen their operation. I've been helping Sean hide, but I can't do it anymore. I'm in too deep." My mind raced, weighing the risks. If Rachel was telling the truth, Elliot was in far more danger than I'd ever imagined. "But if it was a trap, please," Rachel begged. "I know I have no right to ask, but help us, for Elliot's sake." In that moment, I knew my decision would change everything. The safe, quiet life I'd been building for Elliot and myself hung in the balance. But could I live with myself if I turned my back on this threat, no matter how remote? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Get inside," I said, opening the door wider. "Tell me everything." As Rachel stepped over the threshold, I silently prayed I wasn't making the biggest mistake of my life. The familiar chime of an incoming video call filled my living room. I settled in front of the laptop, eager to see Isabel's face. These calls had become a lifeline for both of us, a moment of normalcy in the chaos our lives had become. "Olivia, dear," Isabel's warm smile filled the screen. "How are you and Elliot holding up?" I forced a smile. "We're managing, Isabel. How about you? How was your doctor's appointment?" A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "Doctor's appointment? Oh, yes. It was fine, I think." My heart sank. This wasn't the first time Isabel had forgotten something important. I glanced at the sticky note I'd placed on the corner of my screen. "Ask about memory test results." "Isabel," I said gently, "do you remember what the doctor said about your memory?" She frowned, her eyes darting away from the camera. I'm not sure. It's all a bit fuzzy." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "The doctor mentioned some concerns, remember? They wanted to run some tests." Recognition dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by fear. "Oh, Olivia, I'm slipping, aren't I?" Tears pricked at my eyes. "We don't know anything for sure yet, but we'll face it together, okay?" Isabel nodded, visibly pulling herself together. "Of course, dear. Now let me see my grandson." I called Elliot over, watching as his animated chatter brought the light back to Isabel's eyes. But as he regaled her with tales of his latest school project, I noticed her struggling to follow along, asking the same questions multiple times. After Elliot bounded off to play, Isabel's facade crumbled. "I'm scared, Olivia," she whispered. "What if I forget him? What if I forget you?" "We won't let that happen," I said firmly, even as doubt gnawed at me. "We'll figure this out." As we said our goodbyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were losing Isabel, bit by bit. The one person who had stood by us through everything, who had helped us escape Sean's destructive influence, was now facing a battle of her own. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the notification popping up on my screen. An email from an unknown address with a subject line that made my blood run cold. "We know where the boy is." With shaking hands, I opened the message. Inside was a single image, a photo of Elliot on the playground at his school taken earlier that day. Below it, a message: "The debt isn't settled. Meet us, or the kid pays." Panic clawed at my throat. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, when another email arrived. This one contained a video. My finger hovered over the play button, dread pooling in my stomach. Sean's battered face filled the screen. "Olivia," he croaked, "I'm so sorry. They have me. They'll come for Elliot next. You have to run. Take him and go. Please, protect our son." The video cut off abruptly, leaving me staring at my own horrified reflection in the dark screen. My mind raced. We couldn't stay here, that much was clear. But where could we go? Who could we trust? Isabel's offer of her summer house in Maine suddenly seemed like a lifeline. Secluded, far from here, a place where we could regroup and plan our next move. But could I uproot Elliot's life so suddenly? And what about Isabel? In her deteriorating condition, could she handle such a drastic change? The sound of a car door slamming outside jolted me from my thoughts. I peered through the curtains, my heart pounding as I saw two men in dark suits approaching our front door. In that moment, I knew I was out of time. Whatever decision I made would change our lives forever. Stay and face whatever was coming, or run and leave everything behind. The doorbell rang, its cheerful tone a stark contrast to the terror gripping my heart. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. It was time to choose. The video call with Isabel had just ended, but something felt off. I moved to close the laptop when I realized Isabel's camera was still on. She must have forgotten to end the call on her end. I was about to disconnect when a movement caught my eye. A shadowy figure crept into Isabel's living room, careful to stay out of her line of sight. My heart stopped as I recognized the intruder, Sean. "Isabel?" I shouted, forgetting for a moment that she couldn't hear me. I watched helplessly as Sean rifled through drawers, pocketing what looked like jewelry and cash. Frantically, I dialed Isabel's number, praying she'd pick up. On the screen, I saw her reach for her phone, confusion etched on her face. "Olivia, didn't we just talk?" "Isabel, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Sean is in your house. He's stealing from you. Call the police right now." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then, "What?" "No, that's impossible. Sean wouldn't." A crash echoed through the phone and the video feed. Sean had knocked over a lamp, startled by Isabel's voice. Our eyes met through the camera, and for a second I saw the desperate, cornered look of a man with nothing left to lose. "Mom?" Sean's voice was shaky. "I can explain." "Get out!" Isabel's scream was filled with a fury I'd never heard from her before. "Get out of my house, you thief!" Sean bolted for the door, but not before grabbing a small safe from the bookshelf. My blood ran cold. I knew that safe contained Isabel's most valuable possessions and important documents. "Isabel, call the police now," I shouted. "I'm on my way." I ended the call and raced for my car, my mind whirling. How long had Sean been stealing from his own mother? Was this why she'd been so forgetful lately, constantly misplacing things? As I sped towards Isabel's house, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Got what I needed. The kid's next. You can't protect him forever." Terror gripped me. I'd been so focused on Isabel, I'd left Elliot vulnerable. I called my neighbor, begging her to check on him at his after-school program. Screeching into Isabel's driveway, I found her sitting on the front steps, looking shell-shocked. Police cars surrounded the house, their lights painting the quiet street in surreal flashes of red and blue. "Oh, Olivia," Isabel sobbed as I wrapped her in a hug. "How could he do this? My own son." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my neighbor. Olivia, Elliot's not at the community center. They said a man claiming to be his uncle picked him up an hour ago. The world tilted beneath my feet. Sean had Elliot. All this, the break-in, the theft, it had been a distraction. A detective approached us, his face grim. "Ma'am, we've got an APB out on your ex-husband, but I need to ask you some questions." I nodded numbly, my mind racing. How could I have been so blind? I'd thought cutting Sean out of our lives would solve everything, but I'd underestimated his desperation. And his cunning. As I recounted everything to the detective, a terrible realization dawned on me. Sean wasn't just running from debt now. He was running from the law, with my son as his hostage and bargaining chip. My phone buzzed again. Another text. "Meet me at the old factory. Come alone, or you'll never see the kid again." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at me to tell the police, to let them handle this. But I knew Sean. He was unpredictable, dangerous, if he felt cornered. I looked at Isabel, still shaken on the steps, then at the detective waiting expectantly for more information. In that moment, I had to make an impossible choice. Trust the authorities to save my son, or take matters into my own hands and risk everything. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a physical force. Whatever I chose, there would be no going back. Elliot's life hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. My heart pounded as I approached the old factory, its dilapidated structure looming against the darkening sky. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to let the police handle this. But the thought of Elliot, scared and alone with Sean, propelled me forward. I'd managed to slip away from Isabel's house, leaving a vague note about following a lead. The guilt of lying to her and the police gnawed at me, but I couldn't risk Sean doing something desperate if he saw cops. As I neared the entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows. Rachel, Sean's girlfriend, her face pale and drawn. "Olivia," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." I brushed past her. "Where's my son?" She grabbed my arm. "Wait. You need to know, Sean's not alone. The men he owes money to, they're here too. They're dangerous." "Olivia." Cold fear gripped me. "What do they want?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "They want Elliot to sell him, to cover Sean's debts." The world tilted beneath my feet. Human trafficking, my worst nightmare come to life. "Where are they?" I demanded, my voice barely recognizable. Rachel pointed towards a back entrance. "Third floor. But Olivia, you can't go alone. We should call the police." I was already moving, her pleas fading behind me. As I climbed the rusted stairs, I dialed 911, leaving the line open in my pocket. If nothing else, they'd trace the call. Voices drifted down the hallway as I reached the third floor. I crept closer, my heart in my throat. "Just a kid, man. This wasn't the deal." Sean's voice, trembling, a deeper voice responded, "The deal is whatever we say it is. You owe us, and the kid will fetch a good price." "Mom." Elliot's cry pierced the air, followed by the sound of a slap. Something in me snapped. I burst through the door, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The scene before me was chaos. Sean, bloody and bruised, stood between two menacing men and Elliot, who was tied to a chair. Another man held a gun, swinging it between Sean and my son. "Let him go," I snarled, surprising myself with the ferocity in my voice. The man with the gun turned, his eyes cold. Well, Mommy's here to save the day." Sean's eyes widened. "Olivia, run! Get out of here!" But I stood my ground. "I'm not leaving without my son." The gunman smirked. "Noble. Stupid, but noble. Here's the deal, lady. Your ex here owes us a lot of money. The kid's our insurance." "Take me instead," I said, my mind racing. I just needed to stall until the police arrived. "I'm worth more. I can work, pay off Sean's debt." One of the other men laughed. "Oh, we could definitely find a use for you." Elliot whimpered, and I met his terrified eyes. "It's okay, baby," I soothed. "Mommy's here." Suddenly, Sean lunged at the gunman. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. I screamed, rushing towards Elliot. Everything happened in a blur. More gunshots rang out. I reached Elliot, shielding him with my body. Glass shattered as figures in tactical gear rappelled through the windows. "Police! Freeze!" Relief washed over me as I untied Elliot, pulling him close. But as the chaos settled, I realized Sean wasn't moving, blood pooling beneath him. "Daddy?" Elliot's small voice broke through the commotion. I turned him away, my mind reeling. Sean, for all his faults, had tried to save us in the end. But at what cost? As paramedics swarmed in and police secured the scene, I clung to Elliot, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. We were safe, but nothing would ever be the same. The detective from earlier approached, his face grim. "Ma'am, we need to talk about your ex-husband. And there's something you should know about his mother." My blood ran cold. What more could possibly go wrong? The sterile hospital corridor seemed to stretch endlessly before me as I made my way to Sean's room. Elliot's small hand clutched mine tightly, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and confusion. I'd debated bringing him, but in the end, I knew he needed this closure as much as I did. Outside Sean's room, Isabel sat in a wheelchair, her face a mask of grief and anger. The doctors had insisted she remain seated after her collapse upon hearing the news of Sean's involvement in Elliot's kidnapping. "Are you sure about this?" Isabel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, steeling myself. "We need answers, all of us." As we entered, Sean's eyes fluttered open. He looked small and broken in the hospital bed, tubes and wires snaking around him. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved, before addiction and desperation had twisted him into someone unrecognizable. "Olivia," he croaked. "Elliot, Mom, I'm so sorry." Isabel wheeled herself to his bedside, her eyes flashing. "Sorry doesn't begin to cover it, Sean. You stole from me. You put your own son in danger. How could you?" Sean's face crumpled. "I never meant for any of this to happen. The gambling, the debts, it all spiraled out of control. I thought I could fix it, but you couldn't," I finished for him. "And instead of asking for help, you dragged us all into your mess." Elliot, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Why did you take me, Dad? I was scared." Sean's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, buddy. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought if I had you with me, I could figure something out. But those men, they had other plans. I never would have let them hurt you, I swear." I felt a surge of anger. "You shouldn't have put him in that position in the first place, Sean. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" Sean looked away, unable to meet our eyes. "I know I've ruined everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you all to know the truth about everything." Over the next hour, Sean laid bare the full extent of his addiction, the depths of his debts, and the desperate measures he'd taken. With each revelation, I felt a mix of horror and pity. The man before us was a shell of the person we'd once known. As Sean's strength waned, Isabel spoke up, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes. "I can't do this anymore, Sean. I love you, but I can't watch you destroy yourself and hurt the people around you. When you get out of here, you're on your own." Sean nodded, a look of resignation on his face. "I understand. I don't deserve your help, any of you." I took a deep breath, knowing what I had to say next. "Sean, I'm filing for full custody of Elliot, and I'm getting a restraining order. Until you can prove you're clean and stable, you can't be a part of our lives." To my surprise, Sean didn't argue. "It's for the best," he said softly. "Elliot deserves better than what I can give him right now." As we prepared to leave, Elliot hesitated. Then, in a move that brought tears to my eyes, he hugged his father. "Get better, Dad," he whispered. In the weeks that followed, our lives slowly began to rebuild. Isabel, with proper medical care, showed improvement in her memory and overall health. She moved closer to us, becoming a constant, loving presence in Elliot's life. As for me, I found strength I never knew I had. The ordeal had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it had also shown me the depths of my resilience and love for my son. One evening, as Elliot, Isabel, and I sat around the dinner table, laughing and sharing stories, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. We had weathered the storm together, emerging stronger and more united than ever. Looking at my son's smiling face and Isabel's contented expression, I knew that despite the pain and hardship, we had found our way to a new beginning. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with love, honesty, and the unbreakable bonds we'd forged, I was certain we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As I tucked Elliot into bed that night, he looked up at me with those wise eyes of his. "Mom," he said softly, "are we going to be okay now?" I smiled, my heart full. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be more than okay. We're going to be wonderful." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it.